And a very good morning to you this Thursday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We are here with you all the way until 9:30. As ever, if you want to get in touch with us, you can drop us a comment. We're broadcasting live on YouTube, on Twitter and on Facebook. And of course, you can listen to the audio-only stream if you don't want to be distracted by our beautiful faces of a morning. Just go to offthewall.com and hit the play button in the top right-hand corner. Even Kenny laughed. Kenny, how are you?
Beautiful faces. Oh my, that is a stretch. If ever there was one.
I don't think there's any tongue-in-cheek nature to that at all. I think he's just being genuinely honest.
Matter of fact.
Matter of fact, completely. Straight arrow.
Well, obviously he's looking in our direction, so you obviously take that as a compliment.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
We are not currently involved in any relationship with any particular coffee brand or
sorry, apologies.
But no, the reason I'm bringing it up is because Eoin, eagle-eyed Eoin, noticed that the name on the cup, what's the name on the cup?
It says Ken, not Kenny.
Yeah.
Ken, like Barbie's partner.
Correct, yeah. So
like,
when I'm asked for my name, I suppose the point you make, when I'm asked to give me name, and whether it's a coffee or whatever else it might be, application form, generally it's Ken.
Right.
Just instinctively, I'll go with Ken. Although maybe some of them more of an official nature, might extend it
to Kenneth.
We're talking about Kenneth,
like for your passport.
But never.
And when you're filling out forms for the airplane tickets.
For the airplane.
I know. I did stutter over that.
Just a sign.
When you're buying tickets for a flight.
Yeah. Well, I've had issues with this.
Well, yeah. So
in fact, only a few weeks ago, I was flying back Flybe, and I got pulled in check-in. Ooh.
Different name for your passport?
Yeah, Ken on me when I was booking the flight, but my passport is not the extended version, but obviously my second name, Kenneth.
Yeah.
Edward Cunningham.
The full thing?
Yeah, Kenneth on my passport, so that was obviously a mistake to begin with. But she said, she was very good actually, she said, look, in future, extended version.
You need to put the full name on the Flybe tickets.
We had this with traveling with the Ireland team once. One of the lads done exactly the same thing. It was a huge issue. Yeah, we were delayed at the airport for a period of time. They wouldn't bend on it. A shortened version of the name. So I've seen it happen up close.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
Well, you're Jared on your passport.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It gives you a whole new personality, guys, to have a completely different name.
Yeah, I know.
Jared.
I know. We shortened it. I shortened it very quickly. At about 12, I was like, "What's your name?"
Why not Jerry?
Well, because Jerry's my dad.
Ah, right.
You know.
Jerry's a bit of a character.
Yeah.
The lad likes a drink, life and soul of the party. Jerry takes Jerry home after a good night out in the pub.
Jerry's an intellectual. Jerry is a pint man.
Yeah.
Shut up, lads. We were talking about a mythical place. Was it Diggs Diner?
The Diggs Diner. He doesn't listen to anything I say.
No.
We're having this in-depth conversation.
We were looking it up.
He just picks little snippets out of the conversation and then just throws them at you.
Well, the reason we wanted to bring
Have
this
you
up
got a short attention span or something? Is that what it is?
I definitely do. It's exhaustion from being a parent. You know what it's like. So the reason we were doing this was because Darren brought up. He says he's got the best breakfast, best full Irish breakfast.
Me and Darren have an obvious connection. That's the first thing. There's soulmates really there in terms of the part of Dublin which we hail from, literally spitting distance from each other.
You're both from Dorset Street.
Well, Dorset Street, Stroke, Blessing Street. Yeah. So we're kind of reminiscent to some extent how the area changes as you do. You get a little bit older, bemoaning the fact that the good old days.
Yeah.
We did mention the fact there's a few nice restaurants, eateries.
Because you're obsessed with a breakfast place around the corner from here that has a nice.
Obsession is a strong word, Jay. Obsession is a strong.
I would say
keen interest.
Yeah, you're
who hasn't got a keen interest in food? Everybody's got an interest.
No,
in
specifically
food.
Breakfast baps. You're like
flowery baps.
Yeah.
Blaz.
Yeah, it's all good. All good. You got to get an edge on the competition, and the key words that Darren used were we got all of our attention. Everybody perked up. Fry bread.
Yeah.
When do you see fry bread on the breakfast menu these
days?
Yeah. Very rarely.
Artery clogging. Just a
bit of a snobbish attitude still, do you reckon, lingering in regards to fry bread?
They actually give you a tub of cholesterol on the side in case you need more.
Just a little bit of fat seeping out of it. You're like, yeah, this is.
No, but it's not. It's all about the crisp. It's about the crisp. As Darren was saying, crisp on the outside and just a little bit soft, so you can just taste the.
We're going to go down and review this, is what we've decided. I was completely joking
about
the whole
many
cholesterol thing. It's actually very good for you.
Oh, no, I'm right there.
And we're gonna have to go and give this thing however many stars out of 5.
Oh, bread.
Ken has a date in his usual breakfast spot of a Thursday morning with a former professional footballer who might be coming in today to do a show here.
I've got a few people dropping. I'd like to throw it open to people. You know, you know where I am.
Yeah.
Pop your head in.
You're kind of like a mafia don in the back of a diner. People just come and go as they please.
Good fellas.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Big Italian restaurant. Right, we should talk about Leo Messi because last week Eoin was saying he's no good anymore. And
I didn't say that.
He said La Liga is a crappy league. And
talk about like lack of attention span.
The Premier League is finished, or the Premier League has finished off La Liga as a force. And lo and behold, last night it was even on the crappy pitch that is Wembley.
Watched the game last night.
I did. He was unbelievable.
But Messi and the Barcelona performance as well really surprised me. It's a funny thing to say, really. It's Barcelona still some top qualities, still probably the best player in the world, but they played with an intensity, and a quality to their football which I haven't seen for a while. Just in terms of how crispy they passed the ball, how quickly some of the combination play, even kind of in terms of their winning the ball back, kind of really aggressive in terms of winning the ball back high up the pitch from very early on in the game. And Messi, he had an eye the tiger stuff. He was on it early on in the game.
He hit the post twice as well. The graphic in the post match on BT was hit the post, and it was like, hang on a second, that's not a replay. He did it twice. Yeah, he
should have had 4 goals last night. It was. They
were exactly the same. It was like here's the like star square star circle. It's exactly the same.
It's in a weird way. I completely understand what you're saying when like you kind of say that. So what did you say? Was it kind of an unexpected performance, or that you were kind of surprised by them last night? Like
they took me by surprise how well they played, just in terms of the intensity of play and the quality of how quickly they moved the ball over this season. They started the league slowly this year, but I'd say over the last maybe 12 months, I've been used to Barcelona, watching Barcelona too often, been a little bit too lethargic, a little bit too slow with the passing, which has been unlike them when they're at their very height.
But what was their identity? I didn't know what their identity was over the last while. Since Guardiola has gone, basically, like there was a period where they were combative and a bit quicker to move the ball forward, and you weren't really sure if that was who they were under the last manager, and now it looks like they're getting back to some kind of, I don't know, maybe that one performance is too much to read into, and Spurs are Spurs, but
I think the way like so much stuff has happened in the world since Messi's brilliant goal in the group stages to keep them alive in the World Cup. I think that was the last time on a world level that we've kind of been wide-eyed at Lionel Messi, and that's a long old time to go without it. And this sounds so weird to say, but we kind of almost pushed Lionel Messi to the side a little bit.
Subconsciously, I know what you're saying.
People who want to like talk about awards and stuff, like he wasn't even featured on the best shortlist. I personally thought that was justified. I thought that was the correct decision. I like if he was there, I wouldn't have complained, but I could see why they did that.
There has been a slight drop off, even with somebody his quality. There has been a slight drop off in terms of performances.
And then last night it was just a reminder that this guy is the best player to ever lace a pair of boots. There is no question.
Well, that's taken to a different. That's a different conversation. But I take your point. His performances was mesmeric last night. His decision making, and Tottenham put the squeeze on. They tried to press him, Wanyama, physically get round and make tackles. Just saw him coming, kept popping it around the corner, playing 1-2 touch, finding those little pockets of space, picking the right pass, accurate with his passing. Yeah. Oh my God!
We'll get into that other conversation about the greatest ever to lace the boots in a couple of minutes' time. But I want to tell you what's coming up. Chris Fields is going to join us a little bit later on because we're 2.5 days away from the middle of the night fight between McGregor and Khabib. That's going to happen, and we're going to talk about it today and tomorrow. We'll be previewing it in great detail and bringing you some analysis of what might actually happen and how it is that McGregor tries to trap people, particularly like he has done in recent fights. We're going to talk about rugby rivalries around about 9:10 this morning, because it seems like Leinster and Munster are all buddies now, and all buddies until somebody kicks somebody in the head, hopefully on Saturday, about 10 minutes in, to reignite it. That would be good. We'll also talk about the Champions League with Kenny in just a minute, or Ken rather, and it's time now for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Leinster this Saturday?
They're playing in the Pro 14.
I always get it mixed up, the rugby competition, the Heineken Pro 14. They're always switching around. They're always switching it around, aren't they? Celtic
well, it's the
League,
Heineken Cup, really.
Celtic Tiger League. Anglo-Welsh.
Only Dave McIntyre watches the Anglo-Welsh. The Examiner Sport, breathtaking. Messi puts on another masterclass as Spurs outclassed. It's good to be able to have these performances from Messi that reminds everybody that, like, no matter what part of your life you started watching Leo Messi, like the kids who are 7 now who have watched that last night will forever remember the fact that they saw Leo Messi at his absolute best, because that was as good as he's ever been. And that's mad that he's as good now as he was when he was 17, 18, 19. That's a bit mad. Like that level.
Yeah, but he hasn't been that level. To be fair though, Jay, that level of performance which he pitched last night, we haven't seen that on a regular basis for him over the last, I'd say even maybe 12 to 18 months, where other stages of his career he was churning out those performances on almost week in, week out. It seemed that way. That's why he's winning every individual award on a regular basis for that reason. It's not pitching up with a top class performance once every 6 weeks, every week in, week out. So that's where I think the drop off has been. Injury-wise, you can factor in his age, a lot of different things, a little bit of evolution at the football club in terms of key players going out, change of style, different manager, all that. Even personal issues you wouldn't even be aware. You never know what's going on in the background in terms of that little kind of drop off.
The threat of going to prison for non-payment of taxes would be something that you might kind of associate now in the background with.
Never gonna. No. Could you ever see Lionel Messi being led to the jail?
I don't know. I mean, he plays for Barcelona.
Does everybody suspect? Anybody ever suspect, even for a moment, when you hear the likes of Messi, Ronaldo's been the same, Marino, when they're brought up in charges, potential jail sentence, and they'd be really even suspect for an instant that they're going to spend some time in jail.
For tax reasons, I guess there's always...
Al Capone, is it? It's not Al Capone, is it?
It's not Al Capone, but, you know, if you're Messi from Barcelona and the court is in Madrid, you might be, I'm telling you, Spanish football is dodgy. How do you think they got Alfredo Di Stefano all those years ago?
Sort of like a red wedding field to walk into the courtroom and everyone's wearing Real Madrid jerseys and you're Lionel Messi.
Well, white handkerchiefs.
England pursuit of Rice says a lot about Southgate's lack of options, is Emmett Malone's piece. Ireland International yet to decide future, but Southgate has been frank about England's dwindling options. So, look, he's officially yet to decide his future, right? But, like, off the record, everybody's already briefing about the fact that he's gone. We're hearing those rumours. Everybody's hearing those rumours that he's already gone.
I must admit, I haven't heard that. Are you going to reveal a source here, are you? Or?
No, I'm definitely not going to reveal a source.
No. Well, that's obviously a natural consequence of the position that he's in. I can't say I've heard any confirmation of that, but clearly he's given it some serious thought. That's obvious. I'd just like to see it resolved one way or the other. This is a bit of a complex issue for me. I wouldn't just throw a couple of sentences at it. Because my opinion is this changed. I've got a more rounded opinion on this than I would have had some time ago. It's difficult for me to kind of take the emotion of it. But I do understand the situation Declan's in. It's entirely different to the one I found myself in. A lot of players like myself, brought up in an Irish background, brought up in this island.
You had no choice.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't a choice. It's as simple as that. Where Declan clearly has a choice. I think he's very proud of his Irish roots. I've seen it because I've worked him in under 19 level. He loved the environment he was in. He loved the players. And those pictures which we see of him participating with the squad, whether it be the underage groups or the senior international team, I take that as genuine. That's not a front. That's not a put on. I think those emotions which he was feeling at the time are absolutely genuine. I think he'd love to be a part of it. But something's changed in a very short period of time. It's changed a little bit. Clearly there's been interest from Gareth Southgate. And I can understand that if there's a little bit of indecision there and he feels a certain pull towards the English team, I can understand that. And that's not an easy thing for me to say because for the reasons that I've said. But a player brought up in England, English friends, obviously a big section of his family are English as well. You're brought up in that environment. It's understandable. And you do have to try and take the emotion. And that's what I try and do. That's not easy for me, especially when it comes to the international team because of my association with it. But when I do take the emotion out and look at it from a practical point of view, I do have. I can understand it. I can understand maybe that little bit of indecision, but it can't go on. It can't go on indefinitely, and it does irk a little bit that this thing continues.
There's 3 or 4 other stories in the papers today about other players from the underage ranks who have the option to play for other countries and who look like they're being scouted / seduced by other countries. There's a young guy who's been approached by Luxembourg. There's
Ryan Johansson has been approached by Luxembourg. He's the Bayern Munich rising star who we've spoken about. His mother's from Ireland. His father's from Sweden, I think, but Luxembourg.
I've read a little bit about it. You're right, yeah. It's just the nature of the world. It's just something we've got to get our heads around. And it's only because of the fact, probably because I had an association, I had a bit of, in a relationship with Dad, who spoke to his dad, that I can honestly say, for me, it was absolutely genuine in terms of his buy-in to the international league. Yeah, at under absolutely.
And I can totally see that as well, like, because, you know, it's the first opportunity you have to express a relationship with something that's clearly important to people in your family. I also get the full understanding that nationality means far less to people as time goes on. Like, if you are born in Ireland to parents from a different country, of course you're going to have a relationship with that other country. The same way that we would expect parents of children in Ireland to, or of children born in England, to kind of remind them that, look, we're actually from a different part of, we're not from Great Britain, we're from a different, like, it's just a fairly natural thing. And so
every situation is different, Ger. Every personal situation is different. Some people have those very strong links to Ireland in terms of extended family, spending time back here to be a really close bond. Others won't. They may have a parent from Dublin or the country or some part, but the bond won't be as strong. You know, it just won't be. That's just part and parcel. So there won't be that kind of pull, that real pull, that obvious connection for some people, that emotional attachment that there will be. I played with lads like second generation Irish parents, born and grew up in England, but they're Irish.
Yeah.
They feel it. You know, every bone in the body. You know, that's the emotional attachment they have. It's not open to debate.
And do we as a country make the decision that we only want those, or do you go, look, it's a as you said, it's a complex issue, and so therefore, ultimately, whatever gets the people to play, we park that, and when they're on the field, we expect full buy-in to what the manager's trying to do, and that we don't care if they're willing to die for Ireland, that ultimately what we want them to do is to play football in the style that we want them to play and be professional about it. Like, is that it, or is the thing that we have as a small country?
I do like that little bit of it, that on an emotional level. I do feel that little bit of attachment. It's going to be stronger for some than from others. What I have a problem with is fixation on getting out there. As other countries are doing, we got to go and grab them. We got to grab and get as many as we can. Isn't associated, go and get them. And actually falling over ourselves almost, like, you know what I mean, to entice these players, you know, to encourage these players, to beg these players. That's what it can borderline at times, begging these players. I'd never, ever go down that particular route. There's an association there, he's entitled to play for us. Yeah, you pick up the phone, you make contact with the player, and then it's very much the player's decision.
Yeah, and so I think like that might be what the FA are doing with the younger lads. You bring them in, you give them some exposure to former internationals at the youth level, you kind of get them to see what it's all about, and then they're allowed to make their own mind up when they hit 18, 19, that we haven't committed them, we didn't cap Declan Rice, for example, we left it up to him. And so maybe we haven't treated this in the wrong way by like rushing him into the decision.
But that's all we can do. Yeah, I wouldn't be overly critical. Said it would be overly critical of the association. We bring them in. We bring them in for the right reasons, because there's an association there. We think potentially that they're good enough. We can develop them. Don't bring them in because, well, potentially he's going to be capped by England in a year's time. Let's get him and get him capped. He can't play for anybody else. That type of thing. That's absolutely we're better than that.
Grand. Okay, that's because there is definitely out there since the Grealish incident. There has been why don't we just cap him?
Yeah, I mean I find that embarrassing. I mean, is that how desperate we are? And why are we that desperate?
Is that just the game?
We shouldn't be that desperate. No. We shouldn't be that desperate, because there's talent. There's a talent pool of young players. The width, the length and breadth of this country that we can be tapping into, always has been, always will be. So this kind of desperation to go and grab these players, I think that's what burns me a little bit. That's what I roil up against.
So look, that's an FAI issue, right? That we haven't been able to get the best out of our available resources, and like we can definitely come back to that at some point. But I think the other thing is that we as a country benefited so spectacularly well from Jack Charlton's policy of going and grabbing players, and that is the happiest moment in Irish football history. Euro 88, Italia 90, and the backbone of that team was a bunch of players who some of them had fairly tenuous connections, some of them were absolutely raised in an Irish environment but with English accents, and some of them were here. So in our memory is this kind of sense of, well, let's just go and grab the players and let them play, and then the team spirit fostered by the Irish lads, either born in England or Ireland, will actually get their buy-in and away we go. I think that's where that kind of sense of get them in. Sure, we'll fix them when they get in. I think that's where.
Yeah, but I don't think that was now. I'd like to think that wasn't the case when those players that you were talking about in the Jack Chanter that came in. I'd like to think that wasn't the attitude. I wasn't around at the time around the senior national team. The attitude wasn't, right, we need to get better players here. Who has he got?
That's exactly what Jack Charlton's attitude was. Jack Charlton's attitude was, is there a granny somewhere? Get him in. Like it was with Cascarino, it was with Townsend. It was like, these are players who are good but not good enough to make the England team at the moment. We're going to go and make that phone call. Like, certainly.
Well, I said in time, Ray Howe and Andy proved they probably were good enough to play with the English senior national. But I think it is a fair point that you're making. I think people need to remember that as well, because you're absolutely right. Because that team, people remember so fondly, and they were great lads. And you're talking about Boy, and those lads were fantastic. Because I eventually got myself promoted into that squad, and they were great personally, and they loved it. They loved the dynamic. They loved. They really bought into it.
Created that as well.
Yeah, they created absolutely. They created their own dynamic there. Great relationship. Really reached out to the supporters, to the country, made a real effort for those tenuous links to the country. They bought into it, they loved it, they were a big part of it. So you're absolutely right. So when people kind of talk down maybe second gen and third gen, we need to be producing. I love the fact that we're actually concentrating on players born and developed within this country, schoolboy football,
how much
league
success
of football.
is it realistically going to lead to at the very top level, though? Because you talk about it being desperation in terms of capping these players. It's pretty obvious that Jack Grealish is going to become a Premier League player eventually, a consistent Premier League player. Declan Rice, the same can be said. I don't think there's anything wrong with that little bit of desperation. Being desperate for success doesn't necessarily always lead to a bad thing. And let's not forget, this is the very top layer. At underage level, there is still a consistent structure there, and hopefully when they see their heroes, if you can use that term, qualifying for tournaments on a more consistent basis, then the underage structures might have more aspiration about it, have a realistic chance of a pathway to the top level. I personally don't see any problem with it. I wouldn't necessarily agree that it's embarrassing.
No, I do. I get a little bit embarrassed. I do get a bit annoyed with it, to be honest with you. And I disagree with you in terms of younger players would find this inspirational. I think if anything, I'll get a little bit depressed when I see a player come into the
Declan Rice and Jack Grealish have been their teammates at underage level.
Yeah, but as a general point, in terms of players coming and being invited into the international setup with an indifferent attitude towards their country, I think that's depressing. No matter how good they may be as an individual attributes as a player, as a young player in Ireland with a real aspiration, desire to go and play for Ireland higher up, and within the system over here, to see these players being invited over with that type of indifferent, like I said, attitudes, where I'd find that very dispiriting. I'd actually flip that over a little bit.
Yeah, I can see why that would be if you're a 15-year-old who's like come through the system, played, or if you're a 17-year-old who's played all the way through, and somebody gets parachuted in.
But I'm talking about Declan Rice and Jack Grealish here, like
each reserves. But specifically those two cases, they're two people who we know about, but there's a bunch of other players who come over and get churned through the system.
But that's what I'm saying. I think Declan would be different because, like I said,
it's also dispiriting to be completely crap at senior level. Let's not forget that. It's not dispiriting for them at the moment, seeing Ireland flailing around at international level.
But our underage teams are like getting knocked out of international tournaments because of dodgy penalties and the goalkeeper getting sent off in a penalty shootout. Like, our underage teams aren't doing as badly. Okay, so the Germans hammered us recently enough in one of our underage games, but like, I think the underage structures are beginning to start to perform to some level. No,
maybe they are, and like, can you not have both of those things? Like, this is the rules of engagement at international football now. The other countries are going to be hungrier to poach some of these youngsters than Ireland are if we play by these rules, and we will end up suffering because of it. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't see why we can't have fantastic underage structures and marry that with a good poaching technique, if we want to use that term, if we want to use your term, with people who have some sort of allegiance or some sort of very tenuous link to Ireland.
Mourinho feels let down at the headline on the Irish Times. Manager believes the club should have backed him over the Pogba situation. This is Jamie Jackson, who obviously is very well sourced. He's saying that Mourinho feels let down by Manchester United and feels that it may be too late to quiet the noise around Pogba.
But he's created all that noise. I'm not actually sure what he's talking about, that they should have backed him over Pogba. What's he talking about in terms of they should have shown him the door?
Pogba, maybe.
Sold him.
I don't know. I'm not sure. And then Brooks Koepka is dismissing the notion that there was any Ryder Cup row with Dustin Johnson. There was no fight, no argument. He's one of my best friends. I love the kid to death.
Oh, that's a shame. I was buzzing when that story initially broke. I was buzzing, to be honest. We might have had a conversation here about it in terms of...
You're buying that? You think?
No, who would you have your money on? Who in terms of
in a fight? I don't know.
But I just think John's, he's got that reach, long arms, isn't it? In terms, he got that Deontay Wilder kind of
Clubbing,
bit of a swinger, like, you know what I mean? Clubber, yeah.
There might be no boxing in the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo. The International Boxing Association have confirmed the sole nomination of Gafur Rakhimov as their next president. As far as I know, he was on like the CIA's most wanted list.
Yeah, Interpol know him better than pretty much anybody else in the world.
Yeah, so you want to do a bit of Googling about him.
The Uzbekistani mafia would also know him quite well.
Yeah.
Also as well, it's Ina Reardon with that story in there. The name escapes me now. I read the article earlier on, but the former head of AIBA also is in a little bit of dodgy territory. I had wondered where he had gone to. I'm not sure where I was when that story broke, but
Woo.
if I can,
Who?
Woo was the last one at AIBA annual congress. He gets carried in by four guys on. He sits on one of those kind of
royalty, like empire,
Sits on a seat like.
I'll just get things. I don't want to do anybody a disservice here. Yeah. So CK Wu.
Yeah.
They had originally chosen somebody else as their president because he was forced out of office after 11 years following several allegations of financial mismanagement, including a missing €8.5 million loan, which completely flown over my head. I'm sure that was big news, but I completely missed that. Well, poor old Wu. I thought he was a good guy.
It's funny you'd watched that documentary that they had on Air Sport recently enough that we would have gone into some details about
that you presented.
Yeah. So there was. Boxing sold like their rights for the next 10 years to a Chinese company to make sure that they were financially secure, and I was like, oh, this is a great deal. And I was like, hang on a second, where did that money go? So it's dodgy as whatever, and I wouldn't be surprised if there is no boxing in the Olympics, which is obviously a tragedy for all the young Irish boxers who are part of the carding system and trying to become Olympic boxers as a stepping stone or as their full career. Like, so if you're Joe Ward, you're looking at this going, I'm going professional. Like in the morning, what's the point in sticking around now as an amateur? There's literally nothing to fight for. So, Carney level of hatred has dropped in Munster Derby. Well, yeah, it's almost like the rivalry is dead.
Well, are you trying to say that hatred is a good thing, Ger? Are you trying to incite hate, that there should be...
There should be a rivalry. Teams are not supposed to like each other. Teams are supposed to, and like there's supposed to be, it drives... Competition drives everything and raises standards. Denmark leave out Eriksson as Arthur remains in Irish exile. Christian Eriksen has been left out of the Denmark squad for their return visit to the Aviva Stadium, but could still make an appearance if he makes a quicker than expected recovery from injury.
Let's make this abundantly clear. The reason why Leinster-Munster this weekend could be seen as something that won't inspire a rivalry isn't as much to do with the sort of relationship between the two teams. It's far more to do with the season setup. The fact that Europe is around the corner. Let's make that completely clear. It's nothing to do with Joey Carberry moving from Leinster to Munster. That isn't the reason why somebody could say that this is why it's the Leinster-Munster
There's a poll running. Is the Leinster-Munster rivalry dead? Is that what it is? I can't read the end of it. Yeah, that's on Facebook. Yes, 5%. No, 81%. It was always like this, 14%. Look, I'm telling you, you guys all have that view. I got the minority opinion, and that's fine.
But are you suggesting that's going to be reflected in kind of the competitive nature of the game? It's not going to be as ferocious in terms of the contact. It's not going to be the same kind of intensity in the game as there was previously, because surely you can't be making that argument.
I think the fans care less about it now than they used to.
But is that going to be reflected in the quality of rugby, the intensity of the rugby on the pitch? That's what I'm, regardless of how it's perceived by people at the game, but possibly in terms of the energy inside the stadium coming from the supporters. In terms of the attitude of the players and what you're seeing on the pitch, are you saying there's going to be a drop off there?
I think
that's all that matters, and really in terms of the rivalry. Because
of the way that the squads are managed, about 10 of Leinster's best players and about 8 of Munster's best players won't be playing. So it'll be like, it will be two good teams, but not too full
teams. That's a different point. If you're saying they're not going to have their best 15 on the pitch.
But that's nothing to do with the rivalry.
But I'm talking in terms of the competitive nature of the game, the intensity of the game. Surely there's not going to be a drop off, because that's what we're talking about.
So I think that Rob Kearney's making the point that there has been a drop off in the hatred between the two teams, because they're now mates from the international setup.
Yeah.
Much better friends now than they were 15 years ago. And
that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter when you go onto a football pitch. In terms of your attitude, how you apply yourself on a football pitch. Oh, he's a good friend of mine now. So I'm going to hit him, but I'm not going to hit him with 100%. I'm going to hit him 90, 95%. Surely we're not making that argument.
Not everybody's as ruthless as Ken Cunningham.
No. I mean, the rugby players for me in particular. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. But I do think the reason, like, just on the kind of weakened teams and stuff, with Europe just around the corner, that is the reason why they need to fix that badly to try and find some other place, if there is another place in the calendar, to put that fixture that it's not right before you start your Heineken Champions Cup, right before the most important sequence of fixtures of your season so far. You put what should be one of the most important games. So it's a shame, like, but
it's a combination of these things. So here's what Kearney's saying. It's certainly different now than it was, say, for my first one 13, 14 years ago. There's not the same level of hatred. Guys get on much better in national camp now. A lot of the guys would consider themselves good friends, and that certainly wasn't the case 14 years ago. So maybe back then, that was a little bit to the detriment of the national team's performances. You need to have real strong relationships with your teammates at national level to be a successful team. At least it has come at a cost where you are getting something positive out of it. Certainly the bond and the togetherness in the national squad is far greater than it was 10 years ago. And then he goes on to say, the timing of the fixtures and the player management means that you haven't really had the teams going full metal, loaded up in some time. So
that's Owen's point of view. I think that's a fair point in terms of prioritising particular games in terms of holding back players. The national team's a great point. I think that there is value to that in terms of players having an obvious connection. In terms of the working environment that you're in, I think that does affect performance, absolutely. I'm just not sure about where it's coming from in terms of the intensity, because of friends, somehow that affects your application, how you apply yourself during the course of the duration of a rugby game. I'm not pointing into that.
What I would say, which might actually kind of agree with your point and Rob Kearney's point to a certain extent, is that I'm completely fine with the fact that the IRFU can take control for this next 12 months over player management and be really stringent in terms of minutes played, because we have such an amazing opportunity to reach a World Cup final here that I've got no problem with that. But doing that means managing minutes in key games like this Saturday evening, for example. So that is another reason for it. That might lead to sort of a cooling of the rivalry, and I accept that. I do think that the fixture placement doesn't help, and as you say, it is a combination of things. I think there is potential in this rivalry still. I just think maybe after the World Cup...
Down the line, like at the moment, there's a weird ecosystem where they all work ultimately for the same employer. Like
particularly in the next 12 months.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, but there's real logic to that. I'm from the outside looking in, and I think that's a great thing. That's exactly the way it should be in terms of the association, the RFU.
Caps what Leinster and Munster can become. Like,
yeah, I take your point potentially to a small extent to the detriment of the individual clubs.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but in terms of the national, the national interest, which probably drives us more than anything else, World Cup coming up in a year's time, small margins, small percentages, we all know how much they matter.
Yeah, like I think the whole Sexton versus Rog thing was such an anomaly. Like if that had happened in today's circumstances, I guess the age difference between them helped, but because they were in Ireland camp together, that would never happen again. Like, you will never see that between Carberry and Johnny Sexton, for example. Whereas I think the more normal situation is Ronan O'Gara versus Felipe Contepomi, because they're not in an international camp together. There is that alien nature, but they're not going to be able to make those signings, as you say.
I'll give you the Times Ireland now. We'll have a look at that. So it's Horan set for return to the Mayo hot seat. This is the news coming through that James Horan is going to be the sole candidate nominated to the Mayo County Board. So congratulations, James. Really looking forward to seeing what you can do with that group of players. And then just stick that back up for me for a sec. So, okay, so that's the, so I just can't read that. Mourinho feels lack of support. That's that one.
And Johnson puts O'Neill on alert. Johansson, sorry, not Johnson.
Hey,
Johansson.
I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one, okay.
Oh my God.
So Johansson is the kid at the Luxembourg qualified kid at Bayern.
Yeah, also Swedish qualified, Ireland under 17.
And then the Irish News, Slough-Neil are out of the Derry County Championship, so no All-Ireland glory for them. And then something needed to be done. This is the proposals about the Standing Rules Committee from the Gaelic Games, that they're going to make changes. You think the changes are good? I think, was that the ultimate end of your conversation with Joe?
The only problem I had was with the goalkeepers kick into that middle area of the pitch, which we eventually resolved that it was a kind of 45-metre area to limit that to just to 4 players, 2 from each team. For me, that didn't add up.
It's when the ball is kicked as well, so you can be standing on
the periphery. As when the ball leaves the keeper, then you're allowed to join in.
Yeah.
So it's not upon contact with the ball, then you can join in.
No. So that's kind of it's slightly unworkable in practice. We'll see what happens. In theory, it's also a little bit unworkable.
I like the other ones though. The other suggestions for me made a lot of sense.
Owner rages as officials withdraw wrong horse. Owner Craig Buckingham said he will seriously consider turning his back on racing after an embarrassing error by officials meant his runner Magic Pulse was withdrawn from the 25,000 sprint final of the Grassroots Series at Nottingham yesterday.
Back page of the Herald this morning is Keane/Arter rift goes on. Midfielder's absence from Irish squad is set to continue, and you've also got Sexton rest for Leinster with Byrne in at number 10. Des Berry pretty much confirming what we all suspected all week. Ross Byrne.
What's the Keane thing?
At number 10. Basically that Harry Arter is not going to be in the next Ireland squad. But we all expected that though, right?
I mean, there was a suggestion that Roy was going to sit down where Harry, there's going to be apologies all the way around, but I never quite bought into that one, to be honest with you. I mean, if Roy felt Harry Arter was deserving an apology, surely he would have made it in the hours or the days immediately after the particular incident. The fact that he didn't suggest that Roy doesn't feel he needs to make an apology, and nobody's going to force Roy into a position to kind of make a public apology to a player if he doesn't feel it warrants it. So it doesn't surprise me that we haven't arrived at a situation where Roy and him have sat down and there's been there's been a handshake or there's been apologies extended by one person or another, because clearly there seems to be kind of entrenched positions there from the two parties, and I don't know the full story behind that. There's a lot of publicity around the flare-up between them, what was said. Generally I think we know what was said between them, but there must be a little bit of background to that as well in terms of the relationship between the two, but there must be something there as well which is maybe driving it as well. It's kind of all blown up. We all know what was kind of said and everybody's had their opinion on it. But clearly, Roy feels as if maybe it doesn't warrant an apology.
Even if it doesn't, do you sometimes just go, for the sake of peace in the valley, I'm going to go, oh, Harry, I'm really sorry about that. Come on and play.
That is an apology. That is an apology. You said that is an apology.
What?
Of sorts, isn't it? I'm sorry what I said.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's not a real apology. You mean he has to be sincere? You've got to be,
I think so. You have to be. Yeah, boy. I mean,
you can fake it, though. You can fake sincerity.
I don't think Roy Keane does fake sincerity, does he?
No. If that's how you feel, you stand by your principles. If you don't think it warrants an apology, don't give one.
But hang on, your principles are getting in the way of you having a better team.
Yeah, but if there's
principles are self-defeating in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to look at the individual story situation. I don't know. Like I said before, we know that was said that particular moment in the heat of the moment. Whether there's a bit of a background to that, whether there's a bit of a bubbling under the surface. We don't know. We may never know.
I mean, the basic implication is that he's faking injury. You're faking injury to get out of training. I mean, it's so ironic. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it is. I take a point from the outside looking in, but just having a career in football, I just look at different levels. You know what I mean? That
there's a complexity to this which we don't.
There might have been a hint of truth to what Roy was saying.
Right.
And maybe he looks at certain players and think,
get out there.
Yeah, looking for an excuse, half-hearted, that ain't good enough. Get yourself out there. Yeah, you got a slight injury, so what? Yeah, the physio's a little bit concerned, so what? Get yourself out on the training pitch. Manage yourself through the session, just get through the session. We need you out there.
Keane still has pain. He still has pain, and his career finished early because he played through games in a way that other players didn't. And it was
everyone plays. We all do. We all play through. We've all popped the pills. We've all taken the injections.
In retrospect, was it the right thing to do? Now you wouldn't advise someone to do the same thing, would you?
On occasions, no. I've had a couple of little injections. I don't think I've had any long-term
for a training session or for a match.
For matches predominantly.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand it for a match. Especially if it's
training sessions, you manage, you got a little slight injury, you're not quite 100%, you manage yourself through the session, you play 60, 70% to get through the session. I think sometimes it can be important for you to be out. If you're doing a bit of team shape, a bit of organisation, maybe the manager's desperate to get the starting 11 onto the pitch, go through a few drills, a few set patterns, and suddenly two players are like, to be honest, Gaffer, I could really do it sitting. They say, well, I need you out there, this is important.
Yeah.
We're playing a certain system at the weekend. I need to bed it down. I need you out there. I need everybody with the clear pictures in the head in terms of what's required of them. I need you, and this is important. You might get yourself out there.
I could buy that, and there's no real running involved. I mean, that would suggest they're working on team shape in the Ireland setup, which apparently they don't do. So,
back page of the Mirror.
Another day.
Back page of the Mirror this morning is Kiss and Hell. Messi double sends Spurs to second straight Euro defeat in group of death, and Napoli add late insult to injury for Klopp. Keane is also saying there's a lot of crybabies. Paul O'Hare writing today, about Roy Keane. Just to get you the exact quotes before.
Aaron's going to bring us the audio that's in a couple of minutes.
All right,
so
grand.
no need to.
Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is Messi's kiss of death. Barca lead Spurs gasping. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is looks bad. Bayern Star is latest to swerve Ireland for Luxembourg.
I mean, it's like
Don't ever bemoan the fact. I know we're talking about in terms of, and that is a complex issue, but once a person makes the decision to jump, whether it's England, Luxembourg, whatever else,
who cares?
Move on.
Yeah.
Exactly. Who cares? Wish him the best. If Declan Rice makes the decision, I'm going to commit myself to my future to England. I wish him all the best. I say good luck to you, and we move on. I do not bemoan the fact that Declan Rice will not play senior international football with Ireland.
Me too. If this kid turns out to be the new Messi for Luxembourg, I'm like, okay, fair enough. He wanted to play for Luxembourg. It's not like we somehow could have like gone and brought a wheelbarrow load of gold to his front door or. Yeah. Like, no. Tommy shouting, yes, we could have. No. With
Declan Rice, it's like, fair enough, all the corporate and the exposure that comes with being an England player, like being a Luxembourg player is pretty crap. So at least he's dedicated to the cause.
Good bankers. Maybe he wants to be, maybe he's going to look after his money.
Like, it says here, Johansson, 17, who was born and reared in the Grand Duchy to a Swedish father, like the fact that it's even called Grand
Reared.
Duchy.
I'm never quite reared. It sounds like he's like cattle or something. Like, you know what I mean? He was brought up on a farm, like, you know, a flock of sheep or something. He was herded every day of the week, like.
It's a Manchester United exclusive on the back of the Sun. Red man walking. This is Neil Custis saying Jose could be gone by next week. I think he could be gone by any week at this point.
Custis is the one who was who had the Zidane story that Mourinho called out in the press conference this week.
He got a picture of Zidane on the phone and he got a picture of Jose on the phone and put two and two together and said they must be talking to one another.
I think it's timing on with the Mourinho. I think the decision may have been made already that he's going to go, but it'd be pointless to actually sack him now and then think, oh right, who's out there? Well, you got to be thinking ahead in terms of we can sack him, but who's there? Is the right man there available now to come in and take this club forward? And if he isn't, they may have to sit where they are until the end of the season until they have a few more options.
Well, that was it. I mean, Zidane is available, and that's why this is.
Zidane, they may not feel he's the. If you look at the vibes in terms of coming out, not much comes out, but in terms of Pochettino reputation, there seemed to be an understanding that he's the type of figure, personality, ideally they want to come into the club young, enthusiastic, good coach.
Simeone. Spend whatever it takes. Convince him. Put the money on the table.
I'm not sure. I've heard a few sides doesn't speak a word of English. A lot of talk about playing style. I wouldn't particularly buy into. I enjoy how Simeone sets up his teams, but he sets them up in a particular way in terms of
Mourinho's playing style, Van Gaal's playing style, David Moyes playing style. All rubbish.
Yeah, and they've all out. And they're all out the door.
None of them had a winning.
Well, how much are they going? That's the interesting. How much are going to factor that in terms of his manager, his playing style, how he likes his teams to play.
Guardian, Mourinho feels let down by lack of support within United. They need someone who cares.
They give him a 3.5-year contract. They give him a new extended deal. Like about how much more support does he want? They've backed him as best they can in the transfer market. I think that's a bit weak.
After their breakfast date this morning, the Keith Andrews Show will be live from 12:30 today, and boy, have we got a show for you. Alan Judge and John Walters are both going to join the show. Here's a snippet from last week's episode. Keith talking about how football's booze culture nearly derailed his career in the early days.
I need to hear this.
I've been quite honest about it in the past. I got sucked into the lifestyle of the drinking culture, which was just part and parcel of football back in the 90s, late 90s when I went over in 96. And I was a bit like you actually. I was always a bit old before my time. You're 24 going on 44. And I was a little bit the same. It's not insulting, it's a compliment in there somewhere. Yeah. So I was a little bit like that. I wanted to bounce off the older players. I liked the lifestyle. And not so much club, but just the team spirit, crack that you used to have together, going to pubs, playing pool. Like Hunty's right, there was a big betting kind of angle in sport in those days. I wasn't particularly into that. But like, you used to be out 3-4 nights a week, which when if you could comprehend, that was like a top championship team at the time. Like, we're going to talk about Derby County a little bit. I just can't see Mason Mount and Harry Wilson going out to Wetherspoons on a Tuesday afternoon.
Is that where he used to go?
No, I didn't go to O'Neill's.
O'Neill's, right.
There's a couple of Irish bars in Wolverhampton we used to go to quite a lot, but like, they were rife. It was all-day sessions. It was Saturday
fans must have
night.
loved it.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. I can't really remember them.
And would any of the... Well, you just said they wouldn't... Like, I would assume that nowadays if a fan... Someone
it's a different era, isn't it? Yeah. Photograph bang, and you can't do it, obviously. So it's a different era, thankfully, for me. But
you didn't do it the day before a game, did you?
No, not the day before a game. 2 nights was the cap off. Thursday night was Greyhounds. Used to go to the dogs and then
Great night out.
sensible night. Yeah, it was low key on the alcohol front, so it wasn't as good as the Tuesday night with a Wednesday off.
Wow, I hadn't heard Keith talk about that stuff before.
I can't picture Keith in the boozer on a Tuesday afternoon, as the lads used to do, drive into a boozer reasonably close to the training ground. But it had to be, the car park was key in terms of the choice of venue. I used to notice with the older lads, you needed a car park that was shielded from the road. So any member of staff leaving the training ground maybe an hour or two after, you immediately couldn't spot your cars. So you needed the choice of venue in terms of the car park location was absolutely key, being able to spin it around the back so nobody could see your car. But in terms of Keith, Keith doesn't strike me, as we know him now, doesn't strike me as a man, point a bitter, whoosh, 8 points a bit. I mean, he's more of a Bailey's. He's got more of a Bailey's. Or requesting the wine list, going to the Wetherspoons and requesting the wine list. You know what I mean? I find that. No, I'm on my own here.
He's
you know what I mean? A la carte menu, exactly. Yeah.
He's the healthiest looking man I know. Like, he definitely has a
reborn. Are you saying reborn?
Oof. But it's interesting.
They're the worst kind. They're the worst kind. Yeah, you know that.
The zeal of the evangelist.
No, absolutely.
But like, he's definitely somebody whose career took off later on in life. So clearly a penny dropped at some point that he needed to become more professional. Like, and you wonder how many Irish careers and how many, like, you're away from home, everybody's saying come to the pub, you've got just about enough money at the start to be able to go out 3 or 4 nights a week.
Difference was I was teetotal. I was down the boozer most of these days with the lads, but yeah, not actually drinking. But you're right, the serious point of it, yeah, in terms of your kind of physical conditioning, there's no argument.
And were you never tempted to like just be one of the gang and drink?
No, I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the pub environment. I did spend a huge amount of time there as a young person. I went over, I was a little bit introverted, very quiet. So the first couple of years in England, I pretty much kept to myself. But obviously, as I became a little bit more confident, opened myself up a little bit. I really enjoyed the group dynamic, and if that group dynamic was down the pub, I was there.
And they didn't mind that you weren't drinking. There was no, cause in Ireland.
Only Irish man, I know, it doesn't rah. But that was all good, bit of buzz. But the lads were, once they got over that, it was absolutely fine.
Because in Ireland, if you're not drinking, people think you're like, there's something wrong there. Your man's not drinking, Jesus, you know.
Yeah, it was a little bit of that. So I can understand a little bit of pressure to go and have a drink, but no, I never really never felt that real pressure. You know what I mean? Yeah, I was there, have a drink. My drinks were spiked. Always used to surprise me, like when people spike me drink, me Coke, or ever put a double vodka in there straight away. I'd be, whoa.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, what? How'd you know? Oh, no. As if I couldn't. Why wouldn't I know? There's a double vodka in me Coke.
That's incredible that your teammates try to spike you.
Oh, that was regular. It was ridiculous, like, you know what I mean?
One last question about this. Were you not sitting at them, looking at them going, what are you doing? We're all professional footballers. We've got a game at the weekend.
No, because I saw, even from a young age, I saw the value of it in terms of out together in each other's company, enjoying each other's company. And I think for me that mattered. That was important. That people might say, did it really have to happen in a pub environment? Well, no. It didn't, ideally. Yeah. And in terms of ramifications for that, potentially for players, like I spoke about, physical conditioning and things like that further down the line, does it help? No, absolutely not. Alcohol in the system as a basic principle.
Not great.
No, in large portions.
You say there that you'd obviously have to park around the back to avoid like management seeing and stuff. Like I think that separation from management is a good thing in that environment, because like you look at PSG last night and you look at Neymar coming off, and it looks like Thomas Tuchel wants to be Neymar's best mate, where he's like whispering into his ear and says, like, he's like, hey buddy, great game there, or whatever he's trying to say.
Yeah.
Like I presume none of the management were ever tempted to be like, hey lads, can we come along?
No, I remember some management occasionally would organise a night out. Generally, it usually came off the back of a bad run. Or what do we do? Do we do more work on the training pitch? You know, are we doing enough in terms of preparation? No, I'll tell you what, I've got a great idea. Let's get down the pub. Let's meet for a booze up down the pub. Yeah, it's comical now, but like you said, it's no bad thing at any time for me getting to play it. But sometimes, well, to be honest with you, Gaffer, I think we really need to spend a bit more time in the training pitch.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe let's practice our free kicks a little bit more, maybe our defensive corners, rather than drinking competitions.
Yeah.
Whoa. Who's next on the mic? Kenny Cunningham, get him up, have a drink.
He's just going to remember the words. All right, I want to move on because Mick McCarthy has potentially been linked with the vacant Aston Villa manager after Steve Bruce was sacked. Here he is speaking about this on Virgin Media Sport last night. Have a look.
News coming through this evening that Steve Bruce has left his job as Aston Villa manager. I don't know how you feel about cabbage, or certainly do you mind them being thrown at you? Anyway, Mick, is it a job you'd be interested in if it came along?
Absolutely, I would. Yeah,
you'd have to be mad not to on that one.
It's a fabulous club, of course I would, but it's only just gone today, so I've been sat doing this. So I haven't had my CV put in anyway. But I would do. It's a great club. Yeah,
I think Thierry Henry is the favourite at the moment. You're right in the running.
He shouldn't be a favourite in front of me. Let me tell you
Absolutely
that.
right.
No way.
And cabbage is a superfood.
I'm sorry, but I'm blowing my own trumpet there.
He wasn't joking.
Not joking.
No, but there's a certain amount of logic to what Mick's saying. I don't mind that. Yeah, fair. Yeah, because there's a logic there in terms of his managerial experience. Now, I'm not one necessarily who buys the fact. It's not a simple formula for me. The more experience you have as a manager, the more you improve, the better you become. I think there's a natural. Some people that is the case, and generally that should be the case. But for that to happen, for me, you need a certain level of intelligence to allow that process to happen. I've seen people manage for a long period of time, and I've spoken to people who work underneath them, and they're managing the same 20 years into the game as they were when they first came.
So is there a potential that, so the other names being linked with this are Thierry Henry and John Terry, is there a potential that either of them are actually better managerial material than Mick McCarthy now?
Yeah, I don't think you can say because, and I'm a big advocate of Mick, and I think he is a strong candidate, and I think Mick is a better manager now than when he first came in as a manager. I worked around his first managerial job at Millwall when he first got his first club job, and also in the international scene. Now, I haven't worked under Mick in the last 15 years since he left the Ireland setup. From the outside looking in and speaking to people who worked underneath him, I think Mick's a better manager now, coach now, than he was 15, 20 years ago. But what was your original question, Jeff?
Is there a possibility that Henry or John Terry go on to become better managers?
But in terms of some players, very bright, I've got a good eye for the game, personality-wise, mix well with the players, can strike up good relationship with the players, and good coaches. Some managers don't coach, some managers do. Some managers are very good coaches, and players respond to that. I think modern players as well really respond to that. Somebody who comes in, understands the game, organises a training session, individual training with players, it'll actually make you a better player. You know, stick with me, I'll make you a better player. I know the game, I understand what's required, I've played in your position, I'll make you better. You know, that type of, a bit of energy, vibrancy, that personality, that type, that can work even with somebody with very little managerial experience. That can really energise a football club.
And everybody has to start somewhere, and Villa isn't the top tier of football anymore. So just a reminder, of course, Virgin Media Sport is the new home of European football in Ireland, with more than 400 UEFA Champions League, Europa League and Nations League games live this season. Virgin Media Sport is exclusive to all Virgin Media TV customers who can also download the TV Anywhere app and stream all the action whenever and wherever they like.
We have forgotten the most important Aston Villa voice in the studio this morning, like top class Aston Villa fan right here. Who do you want? Mick McCarthy, surely.
Oh, compromised. You've really compromised.
Of those three, if I've got to pick between Thierry Henry, John Terry, and Big Mick, everybody. Look, there's so
those three.
Well, Leeds went out and found somebody like a little bit left field, and it's turned out to be a brilliant decision. I would suggest that there's a better candidate than those three out there. But if I've got to pick one of those three, I'm like, probably Thierry Henry at this point to see what happens. Like, let's see what happens.
You're prepared to take every appointment is a calculated risk.
I would give Roy Keane the job. He's
over Mick McCarthy
at this stage. Well, probably would.
Wow. You've really put your side in the Saipan debate there. 16 years later, at long last, nailing his colours to the mast.
More Roy Keane news coming up with Darren in 1 second. Here's James Ryan on last night's Wednesday Night Rugby talking to Joe about his life outside of rugby.
I'm in stage 2, so it's a 3-year course, but I'll probably do it over 4 or 5 years. I just take a reduced workload, so the standard student would take about 6 modules a semester, so I take 3. So no, it's good, and I've a number of guys in there that kind of help me with if I need an extension for something or if I need a bit of help because I can't make a tutorial. So they're really accommodating for all that.
Yeah. Where were you? I was winning the Grand Slam. Okay. We'll allow that one. What modules are you doing at the moment?
I'm doing Modern America, the Irish Experience and International Relations.
Okay. Fascinating. Enjoying it?
I am, yeah. I am. So,
So what kind of stuff in that whole area is jumping out at you at the moment as interesting or catching your eye?
I suppose the Irish experience is kind of interesting. Just learning about Irish immigration and kind of the different phases of that, and how people migrated or emigrated after the famine, and you know, the reasons why are pretty obvious, but in other periods of history they're not as obvious. But yeah, that's all interesting, and yeah, I'm kind of trying to make as much of an effort as I can to get in. When I'm around, to kind of get into that whole. I think once you're in there and you're kind of going to the tutorials and lectures, it kind of all becomes a bit easier, and you're able to kind of you know what's going on.
Future Ireland captain James Ryan there in conversation with Joe last night. Darren, how are you?
Good morning, Ger.
Give us more about this fried bread.
The fried bread is class. Kenny, have you had fried bread before?
We've had the conversation. Good fried bread, though.
Yeah.
Good fried bread.
Poached eggs, fried brown bread. You're on to a winner.
Brown bread.
Brown soda bread now. Brown soda bread. Oh no, that's interesting. That's a little twist.
So it's not French toast.
No, it's not French toast.
No, French toast is not fried bread.
Is it not?
No, it's eggy. It's eggy bread.
You put it in the frying pan.
With egg. It's covered in egg.
Yeah, but you put it in the frying pan. As far as I'm concerned, you put it in the frying pan.
Where's your culture, Owen? Where's your culture?
No.
What are you doing?
Wash your mouth out with salt and water.
What are you doing?
Fried bread is a piece of bread put in a frying pan.
And where do you put French toast when you're making it?
You egg first.
And then where do you put it?
Oh, and
changes the whole dynamic.
In a frying pan.
It changes the whole dynamic.
That is fried.
It's not French toast.
It's just got egg in it.
Soaked in egg.
It's fried toast.
I'd like to apologise to everybody listening and watching for...
The whole chemistry, the cooking procedures, that's all different.
The fundamentals are the same.
No, it's not. It's not.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. What are you talking about?
It's literally bread.
That's like saying a bicycle and a plane are the same because they're both modes of transport.
No, it's not.
Exactly the same.
Very same.
Good. Yeah, exactly.
It's like saying it's like I'm cycling on a bike and then cycling on a different sort of bike.
Stop.
You're still cycling.
Toast.
In years to come, you'll look back at this and go, oh. So we're just stopping you.
It's a bread-based food that's in a frying pan.
The three of us, we're staging an intervention.
I'm embarrassed for you, Owen.
I'm embarrassed for all of you food snobs.
Crispy fried bread.
Yeah.
That's what we're after. Ultimately, that's what we're after.
That's right.
I'll bring you to Violets. That's where we get it.
I'm there. I'm all over it.
Do you want to hear about Roy Keane?
Yes.
Yes, he's hit out at what he's labelled crybaby players. The Republic of Ireland assistant manager was on Notts TV where he addressed the issues Jose Mourinho is facing at Manchester United. But speaking generally, he says modern football is full of moan-back players unable to take criticism. Keane's comments particularly interesting amid reports Harry Arthur will not be included in the upcoming Republic of Ireland squad for games with Denmark and Northern Ireland. The Irish Indo today say Keane failed to make any attempts to bring the Cardiff midfielder back into the setup. Here's what he had to say.
Things will get exaggerated. But if you're a footballer from Manchester United and you put that jersey on and you walk out and you don't give 100% because you might be upset with somebody, then good luck to Mourinho on this stuff.
So you think that Pogba, despite
I'm not talking about Pogba.
Okay.
I'm talking about players in general. Players who get upset with a manager or a coaching staff and think I'm not going to train properly because somebody upset me. There's a lot of crybabies out there. Lots of when you walk out on that pitch, you're playing for your pride, you're playing for your family, you're playing for your city, you're playing whatever it might be. Don't get that worried about what the manager said about you or the coaching staff. You get out there and play. And you can follow it after the match. But when the game's going on, liven up. Play with pride, play with energy, play with spirit. Hopefully play with a bit of skill. But you can always play with skill. You can have a bad day. But on your bad days, you roll your sleeves up and you fight for that jersey and don't get distracted by the balloons out there.
I'm sorry. Don't get distracted by what the manager says about you. Even if he accuses you of faking an injury, you get out there and you play for your city, your team, your country. Come on, Roy. Roy's tapping himself on the shoulder going, ignore Mick, get out there and play. It's the World Cup.
So I think there's the element of truth, what Roy's saying generally about players and modern players, but once you accept that reality, that is the case within the dressing room, you have those personalities in the dressing room, you have to modify your approach as a manager, as a coach. You have to do it. You can't just come out and say, well, this isn't the attitude of players isn't good enough. If there's a negative consequence to that, you have to say as a coach, well, how am I going to resolve this? And if that means I have to modify my approach as a manager, how I deal with these players, that's what you have to do. Almost you have to suck it up a little bit in terms of creating the right kind of environment to get the best out of that player. Now, Roy says, and he's right, I understand what he's saying. You fall out with the manager, put it to one side, be big enough, strong enough person, get on with it, you still go out and do your best. But some players don't find that easy, and they don't find it easy, particularly when that person or that criticism is coming from a man of the stature of Roy Keane. That's not easy. With Roy's presence around the training pitch, in the dressing room, with him more than anybody else, it's not so easy, I don't think, to push those things to the side and to concentrate and focus and to find the kind of performance levels he's talking about when you got that type of presence in the dressing room, and you haven't got that ideal relationship with someone in the stature of Roy and his personality. I think he underestimates Roy in terms of his influence, that kind of presence that he has around the training ground and around the team.
I think he's also confirming in that interview that he is a TV pundit now and not a manager. That actually the role that he will have in the game is calling that stuff out and saying this is the blight on our game, but actually being able to get in and manage millennials who are crybabies. Like if you're calling your staff crybabies, because ultimately he's talking about his players, then he hasn't got the connection with them to influence them in a way that's going to inspire them.
Hasn't he made it worse though? If you're Harry Arthur and you're watching that this morning, I mean, what are you thinking? Because you know it's very much, it would appear to be a very pointed dig, because he makes sure to say, I'm not.
I think it's literally most of the players who ever played for him.
I'm starting to think that Harry Arthur is never going to play for the Republic of Ireland as long as Roy Keane is involved at this point.
I think
that's pretty obvious at this point. I'm very confused by your stance now, given that you said that Roy Keane would be a better Aston Villa manager than Mick McCarthy. But Roy Keane is
of the three, who, like, Keane's not in the running, he's not going to get that job.
Right.
He already fell out there.
Yeah, but like you still said you prefer him to Mick McCarthy.
I just think Mick's championship manager, and he's a manager who's going to keep you in the championship, and Villa trying to get into the Premier League. Like so you've got to actually decide to take a risk on John Terry, or you don't, right? If the list is a completely false duality with three, whatever that would be, whatever tripality.
Triology.
Is that his new MUTV interview?
Trifecta.
Remember the MUTV interview that ended?
No, I don't think it's as dynamic as that. I think that we all knew that that's what Roy Keane thought of people. Like get out there, stop whining, stop bitching about stuff, get out there and do what you're supposed to do.
But when he should be getting Harry Arthur to come back and play for Ireland for the upcoming international.
Kenny's not sure about that.
No, but I'm more of a general point. When you're speaking like Roy has spoken publicly there, that will strike a chord with a lot of people. He's going to get a lot of support, but ultimately it's how the dressing room reacts, which is the most important thing. Because when you speak publicly like that, really you're speaking to your players, for me, first and foremost. And it's all about Roy's relationship with those players, the dynamic between him and the players, the element of respect between him and the players. That's the most important factor. That's key. That's key for me in terms of players' performance. It is a factor. As much as Roy says it shouldn't matter, you go out there and play as he did. That's not always the case. Roy's probably the exception to the rule. And there's many players like him, particularly back in the day. But in today's modern game, it does have an effect. Players probably are a little bit more brittle, and unfortunately, as a modern day manager, coach, you have to recognise that. And like I said, you've got to modify your approach. Don't change your whole character, of course. No, but that's management. That's managing players, isn't it?
Yeah, there's snowflakes, Ken.
No, I think there is an element to that. I think generally players are still the same, but without a doubt there is an element to that in the modern dressing room. But you have to recognise it. As hard as it is, you got to accept it, and you got to try and manage it as best you can.
What else?
A man who does his talking on the pitch. Lionel Messi treated fans to a masterclass in Barcelona's 4-2 Champions League win over Tottenham. His brace in the second half ensured Barca ended a run of 3 games without a victory. He took his Champions League tally to 64 goals and 65 appearances in the group stage. Barcelona teammate Philippe Coutinho described him as the best ever. We can't show you highlights of the performance for rights reasons, but it pretty much looked like this.
Oh, damn.
That pretty much sums it up. You don't need to see the goals.
What a goal.
Larry should have come out of his goal early and just charged to the halfway line, really, to try and tackle him. Yeah, that would have been more realistic.
There's a TV show and people watching and commenting on graphics like that. Liverpool undone by a late goal at Napoli last night. The most disappointing aspect of that defeat for the Reds fans would be their failure to register a single shot on target. The first time in 12 years they failed to do so in the group stages of the Champions League. Napoli lead the way in Group C this morning, while PSG are in second. A Neymar hat-trick helped them to a 6-1 victory at home to Red Star Belgrade. Inter came from behind for the second game running to record a 2-1 win away to PSV. Porto beat Galatasaray 1-0. Schalke 1-0 winners over Lokomotiv Moscow. Well, Arsenal will have to plan without Henrik Mkhitaryan tonight. The midfielder has not travelled with the squad for the Europa League tie with Karabakh. Security concerns the reason amid political tensions between Azerbaijan and his native Armenia. There are no diplomatic relations between the countries at the moment due to a long-standing conflict over a disputed region. UEFA say it was a mutual decision taken by Arsenal and the player not to travel to this match for safety reasons. Well, it appears the cabbage was the vegetable that broke the camel's back. Steve Bruce, axed by Aston Villa. The 57-year-old had been under increasing pressure from Villa supporters. One threw a cabbage at him before Tuesday's 3-3 draw with Preston. Bruce paid the price for a run of just one win in 9 championship matches. Villa currently 12th in the table.
He deserves that, Ken, did he?
The low, it's kind of the low. We spoke about this in depth last night in the show.
The lowest form.
Well, how is it? I think the conversation went on. Is it the lowest of the low? I mean, the fact it was an actual cabbage as opposed to another particular vegetable. Is it the fact it was a cabbage? What
would have made it worse?
The most insulting
vegetable.
Well,
this is what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You wouldn't take if somebody had lobbed a string bean at you. I don't think that would have been. Well, it wouldn't have made as much headlines. Clearly, would it? It wouldn't have made I don't think it would have taken as big an offence. But the fact there was a cabbage.
A bit of kale.
A cabbage. The size, weight. I think you got to factor in size, weight, the whole thing.
Still not as bad as a plane.
We're going to move on to
fried
UFC.
bread. So I'd fried bread wouldn't have upset me.
We'll get you here. Final quick. Two stories.
Shamrock Rovers confirmed that Gavin Bazanu will move to Manchester City. In a statement, the Hoops describe it as the biggest transfer by an Irish club in the professional era. They've not revealed the transfer fee, believed to be in the region of €400,000. But he will not be moving, though, until he completes his leaving cert next summer.
Wow.
Well, the American woman accusing Cristiano Ronaldo of rape has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, according to her lawyers. Catherine Mayorga claims Ronaldo sexually assaulted her in a Las Vegas hotel in 2009, an allegation the Juventus player firmly denies. He paid $375,000 compensation in 2009. As part of that out-of-court agreement, Mayorga had to drop all charges. Before the press conference, Ronaldo tweeted to say, "I firmly deny the accusations being issued against me. Rape is an abominable crime that goes against everything that I am and I believe in." His attorney, Christian Schertz, insists the allegation is manifestly illegal and is one of the most serious violations in personal rights in years. Miss Mayorga's lawyer, Leslie Stovall, says his client has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress and depression, conditions they argue would have made her legally incompetent to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
All right,
This is an individual who she suffers depression, major depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, which involves intrusive thoughts, if you know what that means in relationship to PTSD. She has a lot of problems attributable to the 2009, and it's been very difficult for her. The last 8 or 9 years have been very difficult, and so I'm not sure I want to go beyond that.
All right, this is obviously a story that's going to continue to run. Thanks very much for that, Darren. Up next, Chris Fields, MMA fighter and head coach at SPG Swords, is going to join us in studio to talk about the McGregor fight at the weekend. First, here's Chuck Mindenhall from MMA Fighting and The Ringer talking about McGregor. Have a look.
Because I was one of the guys who might have been critical of that kind of comparison earlier in his career, because we're just so quick to latch on to guys, new guys coming up, and want to assign them a kind of greatness comparison. We want to put them in context with other big fight promoters of the day, but it really comes down to when the scrutiny gets big and the pressures are there and the doubts surmount. I feel like he steps up his game. And there's something about that mentality was really what Muhammad Ali was all about. Obviously, Muhammad Ali was coming from a whole different climate, and there was, there was a lot of turmoil in the world when he was when going through it with the war and everything else. But in this instance, I just feel like each time there is added scrutiny, added pressure, added magnitude, we see Conor McGregor show up in rarer and rarer form, not just meeting an expectation, because that's very difficult to do where he's put himself, but actually exceeding those expectations, both in the fight, in the lead up to the fight, and usually come fight night. So in my mind, he is definitely doing that. I think he's tailor-made for promotion and tailor-made for that kind of greatness.
It's Chuck Mindenhall there, and Chris Fields is here. He's already got the grilling from Kenny in that 20 seconds about which part of the north side he's from. This is how it works here.
An acceptable part of the north side.
Well, every part of the north side is acceptable. We're just thinking, how can he elevate himself, like from a snobbish point of view, from Drumcondra? There's not too many places you can go. Then of course, Keith Andrews sprung into mind, sitting on his 10 acres in Howth Head, and I thought, well, that's probably the only place. That's probably the only place you can go from there.
You should just make sure that Chris knows you're from Blessington Street or
Dorset Street. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So it's Anyway, how are you?
Lovely part of where my wife works there. It's a solicitor on Dorset Street.
Yeah. It's all good.
You don't go there much anymore, do you? No.
No, I do. I walk through most times I'm over. Yeah, my old house is still there. Nostalgia, bit nostalgia.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We want to talk a little bit about how this fight's going to go, and just been watching a bit of analysis of how McGregor kind of traps people. So the analysis of the Aldo fight lasted longer than the Aldo fight. But his technique in that is nearly flawless. In that,
somebody was drilling out the back as well. If you watch, he's actually drilling the shot before he walks out the fight over and over again, because it's something they picked that was going to be a shot with Aldo if he came rushing forward.
Right.
I don't see this being the same, as in, I think Khabib would be a lot smarter. Aldo would have been of the impression that he could outstrike Conor. I don't think Khabib has that in his brain at all. I think he knows where he wins the fight, so I don't see him diving in with a big left hook and getting caught on the way in.
If you're Khabib, what are you drilling ahead of a fight like this?
He just needs to get a hold of Conor. That's his go-to. That's what he's done his whole career. That's where he's done his best work. But as you know from looking at it, it's harder to easier said than done with Conor. You can, even when you're watching him, it's hard to judge just how good he is at maintaining distance and controlling distance. And there's a couple of things that I've kind of taken from it. So there's, on Conor's side, he hits ridiculously hard, but if he manages to, I don't mean knock Khabib out early or hurt, even drop him early, but if he just stings him a bit and Khabib takes a backward step, that fight's finished. So Khabib isn't pushing forward, that fight's finished.
Why?
Well, one, like we were saying, Conor's phenomenal at distance control, and if you ever watch his fights, that's what he does, he creeps people backwards. Khabib takes that backward step, he loses that momentum that'll get him in to get a clinch on Conor. So Conor will never rush in. That's the other option then. If you're moving backwards, someone might rush in and you can grab a hold of him. That's not going to happen with Conor. He'll stay at the end of his shots, which is longer than Khabib's. And he'll keep him just outside of range, but just where he can land, creeping forward.
That was almost the bit that we were watching, the analysis of the Aldo fight. It's so short, but there is 2 or 3 rangefinders where he's just defining the range, and he's actually stepping back to make sure that when he's coming forward, he has the power.
He also sometimes feints with a jab to make people think they're out of range, but he's not full extension, and then crack, big left hand. And that's his main weapon. People go on about spinny kicks and all the other. It's a straight left down the pipe, does it every time nearly, But for Khabib, the big thing for me in this fight is that Conor's a southpaw, so he's right foot forward. Khabib being left foot forward, and Khabib's best weapon is a single leg, which is very easy to pick up on a southpaw, because the leg is right there for you to grab with your strong arm, your right arm first into your left. So that's the danger for Conor, that he has to maintain enough distance to not let Khabib grab a hold of him, but be close enough to hit him. So it's probably the most intriguing matchup. It's the most excited I've been for a fight probably in the last 8 or 10 years, and it's a bit of a throwback fight to early UFCs where it's almost wrestler versus striker. That doesn't really happen anymore. It's like but both guys are so good at their skill set, it's kind of come up again, which is really nice.
So what happens if Khabib doesn't take that step back, which I'm sure, we can see it here, he's going to try his best to not do that. What does Conor McGregor then have to do to avoid going to ground? Because we know once it goes to ground, it's hugely in Khabib's advantage, but actually getting him there, how well placed is he to get him on the ground?
Yeah, so the big thing for Khabib will be to, he's not, like a lot of people, and you've probably heard this analysis, throwing it back to the Chad Mendes fight. Khabib and Chad are not the same. Chad's a American wrestler, shoots big double legs. That's his. So he can can come from distance and explode, and you can even see by his frame, he's that kind of guy, a little short, stocky guy. Looks like Lou Ferrigno took a poo. All right, but so then you have that body type, which is perfectly made for that big explosive move. That's not Khabib. He's like a grinder style wrestler, so he almost he's like a bear. He grabs a hold and mold. So he'll have to push Conor back and get Conor kind of skirting the fence, which is what Conor does to most people, or get a hold of him and drive him there. If it goes to the ground, Conor in the Mendes fight chose to play very safe and just kind of get a guard position and relax. And Mendes landed some elbows, but not a stupid amount of damage. I don't think that's an option in this fight. So you can't.
Really?
I don't think you should relax on bottom against Khabib, because Khabib will just start to overtake. He's different at that. If you watch the Edson Barboza fight, was Khabib's last fight. He has Barboza against the fence, and Barboza's a phenomenal athlete at getting back to his feet. He's a striker. He's phenomenal at getting back up. And there's a moment where the camera's looking at them both, and he has a body lock, and Barboza's coming up the fence, and Barboza just kind of, it's like he knows the camera's there. He looks right at it and goes, and there's that look of, I've never felt this before. Yeah. I've never felt anything like this before in training or anything. So he's obviously a little bit different in that area.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I think it was Joseph Duffy under 42 with his fight analysis, talking about that point that you make about relaxing under pressure, that apparently Khabib's pressure is so tough that you're almost better off just letting it happen, not trying to wriggle yourself free.
I think though, if that starts to happen, then it's Khabib starts to go ahead, he starts landing big shots, and then you have a situation, say that's happened for 2 rounds, now Conor's chasing the fight, and now he's kind of having to rush forward into that area we're talking about, where we wanted to maintain distance. He has to come in fast, and then he's getting caught with the takedown on the way in.
Okay.
So what you want is early, I think, like early pressure from Conor to get ahead, and I think for me, realistically, like that's Conor's best avenue to win the fight, is in the earlier rounds, like pressuring could be making him move backwards and then starting to pick him apart.
Right. Like, what would that be like? So, if they got on the ground, how much of Conor McGregor's energy would that actually exert? Just the process of Khabib grappling with you and being on the front foot on the ground.
See, he doesn't. What Mendes does, Mendes stayed in Conor's guard, kind of throwing elbows for most of it. Khabib will stand up, cup your foot so you can't stand up, throw big shots from on top, and then look to pass. So constantly pressuring you. So the longer you stay there, it almost gets worse. He's like a wet blanket.
Right. No matter what you do.
Stuck to you. Yeah, he's relentless. He's not, like a lot of guys, if they take you down, they'll, if they get to a position where they can almost rest, it's like, well, I'm ahead, I'll relax. That's not what he does. He punishes you the whole time. So my thinking would be the best route would to be trying to get back to the feet to land that shot. You know what I mean? I think lying there and letting him control, and then all of a sudden you're 3 rounds down there, you're chasing, and you're tired. And that pop has gone out of your shot, you know.
How much can Khabib do to stop that shot happening? Because, of course, since Aldo happened, it's like the most famous move in world sports, that you don't let Conor McGregor get that swing at you. Like, surely there's something Khabib can do to stop that, but I presume it's far easier said than done.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of men have tried. He like I said, he has a way of making people think they're out of danger when they're still in danger, and he gets people on the back foot. That makes him really dangerous. He's, I've spoken about this before, he's like, I'm sure Kenny, if I said to Kenny now to pick the perfect athlete for football, he could describe what he'd want. Conor almost fills that for a fighter, for the striking aspect. He's got ridiculously long arms for his body type. He's a southpaw, which makes him awkward. His reactions are ridiculous. He's very athletic build, and then he has that pop. You train that, you get better at it. But there's guys who box their whole life that can never hit like Conor hits. You know, he just has. You're born with a certain amount of that. So
when you say the pop, you're talking about just the strength and the power of the punch.
Yeah, like if you look at Conor's hands compared to his body, they're huge. His wrists are huge. He's like born to knock dudes out. It's lucky he found this sport, you know. I'm sure you have the same thing with athletes. You see them that play football.
I understand what you're saying.
There's a kid, you're like, he's just going to be good, you know. He wouldn't even need to train as much as some other guys. He's just going to be good at what he does. And he has that little thing for striking that makes him scary. So he has that kind of one-shot knockout power.
Right.
A couple of things strike me. Is there any way that McGregor can fight this fight on the back foot? Is there a way that he can be going backwards and still fight? Is there a defensive victory to be won?
Yes, I think he could win it like kind of just outside of range and landing shots and scaring, but he can't end up getting back to the fence at any point. Khabib will shoot.
Okay.
He'll shoot if he sees the fence behind Conor. He'll dive in the takedown, fail on it, but have him against the fence and then creep up into something else. So, I think for me, and like I've been wrong a lot, but for me it's Conor early or Khabib by decision. I think that's the way the fight goes.
Okay,
but
right.
I favour Conor winning early.
Okay,
if I'm being honest.
If it goes the length, is that just because McGregor has rarely gone the length, and when he has, it's been difficult for him?
Yes, and just the like his tools don't lend themselves to a 5-round fight, as in what he's best at. If he's landing it, the fight won't go 5 rounds.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't go 5 rounds, because if he's landing, if he's teeing off on those shots, or he's found his distance and he's controlling and making him move back, that fight's finished unless you're Nate Diaz and you're going with the Homer Simpson approach of I'll absorb more than he control kind of thing, But in reality, most guys, after a few, that's it, it's done.
And what's the difference between McGregor now, after so long out of the UFC game? Like, there obviously has been the Mayweather fight in between, which is a completely different discipline and takes you out of what you're training for this fight. Like, what difference does a layoff make?
It's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, he's striking, like his pure boxing has improved. Obviously, to fight what is the greatest boxer that's ever lived, probably, in Floyd Mayweather. It's hard for me to say that. I don't particularly like him as a human being, but as a boxer, he's phenomenal. But I know I would have obviously trained with Conor a lot, and I've trained an awful lot with Conor's wrestling coach. He's a phenomenal wrestling coach, so I'm sure he has the game plan sorted how to stop Khabib's takedowns. But I'm sure every striking coach that's ever fought against Conor has said, I know how he won't knock you out, and then he does. So, this is what's so... I've found this harder than any of the other fights Conor's had, to kind of be like 100% this is how he's going to win. You know? But
does ring rustiness, does that happen if you're not in for a period of time? Is there just a difference?
There's different athletes deal with it differently. So there's like some guys that would destroy. I think it comes down to a mentality thing, and I don't think Conor will struggle with that. You know what he's like. He's he believes he's the greatest fighter that's ever lived. And to be honest, if he goes out and does this one, it's going to be hard to deny.
In terms of stopping that, though, obviously you can stop that in your sparring sessions.
Yeah,
from what you've heard.
Intensity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are the guys he's sparring with like?
Yeah, good. And he has Sergey there, who's the wrestling coach. He's had 2 really high level wrestlers in for the training camp. 2 Moldovan guys that were on the Olympic squad. So they're going to be putting it on him, and then he has all his usual training partners and his own Roddy, his striking coach, and all that kind of stuff. So he would have been put in some precarious positions. He's had Dylan Dennis over, who's a very high level grappler, jiu-jitsu guy. He's been over for the whole camp as well. So he's been put in some bad positions and had to fight out of him, I'm sure, through the whole camp. But honestly, it's the most intriguing fight we've come across in probably 10 years. And then it could be all over in 15 seconds.
Because Khabib is the perfect, if you were, the point you're making about McGregor being perfect for striking, Khabib is kind of the perfect foil or...
Yeah, like wrestler, heavy top player, kind of. He's not like the American guys tend to prefer like the big double legs and stuff, but they tend to burn up a lot of energy fast. So if you watch the Mendes fight, by the time the second round came around, Mendes is destroyed. He's so fearful of standing with Conor that he's diving on big takedowns, but that's like trying to do a 100-metre sprint for 5 minutes and then having to come back out and do it again.
You just get knackered.
Yeah, it's such a big movement. You're moving you and another human as fast as you can, in a big explosive movement. So Khabib's a little bit more relaxed about it. He tends to come in, body locks you up. Apparently, I've never trained with the guy, but apparently he just feels like he's in a team called the AKA, American Kickboxing Academy. Luke Rockhold, Daniel Cormier, all these like ridiculously high-level fighters. And the things I've heard from the camp is that he never loses around against anyone. He's just an animal. He's an animal. So it's intriguing. But it'd be hard in our gym to see people take a round off Conor. So it's the same, it's the same thing.
I was just about to say, that's certainly one of the similarities they share, because we've heard things over the last couple of weeks about Conor when he loses in sparring or has a bad sparring session. It's not pretty by all accounts, but that is ultimately the standard which he holds, which takes him to the level that he's at.
Yeah, and that tends to be the same with athletes across the board that are ridiculously high achievers in their sport. They tend to have that mentality, But it's a scary fight to call. I feel like Khabib has been so good. He's never been beaten. He's been so good in his fights that he might underestimate that power, and he might get a little bit cocky. And then when he gets hit, it'll be that kind of, oh wow, who threw that? You know, and then once that panic sets in, you're done.
Yeah. So
once you take the backward step, that's what I mean. Once you go, that's it. He'll eat you alive. That's where he does his best work at that range.
The significant advantage that you would say McGregor has is the black ops, and that he is the superstar of the sport, and this has kind of been engineered for him. Like, does that matter if you're Khabib, or does that actually inspire you even more?
But again, it comes down to the athlete, you know. I'm sure like Kenny's been part of some teams, Irish teams in particular, that have gone out, and obviously there's been something gone on in the changing room, and the lads have gone out and performed far better than they should have. There's no offence to you as players, just that you are beating teams that you probably had no business beating, you know, because
that can be negative as well, Chris,
Yeah.
in terms it can change your mindset, in terms of the emotions can get too ramped up. I remember coming out of dressing rooms, managers really pumping the players up, banging on walls, opening the doors and literally throwing people out of the dressing room, and that never really worked for me emotionally. When you get yourself to a point where you're almost out of control of your emotion, you lose that little bit of focus and inability to keep your emotion, the adrenaline in check. You've almost got to manage it. Those adrenaline surges, which in experience,
if you're younger lads, you're going to be in trouble.
Use it to your advantage, but not to your kind of detriment.
You go out in the first 15 minutes and go bananas, and then you've nothing left.
But even in terms of clarity of thought,
you're not picking the right things. I remember clearly, like, and it'll be interesting to see the walkout now if you watch the Alvarez fight, which is probably one of Conor's best performances. So everyone talks about the Aldo fight because it was just such a clean knockout, but the Alvarez fight, he picked them apart, stopped the takedowns, and then finished them. You can see Alvarez as he walks out starting to fold. You can see him start to go, oh my God. He's never been on this stage before. Conor brings something different. It's a circus, you know, it's huge, it's massive. It's the biggest fights the UFC have ever had, the biggest pay-per-views they're ever going to do. This is going to be easily the biggest pay-per-view they've ever done in the history of it's going to be the biggest pay-per-view in the history of the sport. So is Khabib going to be walking out? He's been great all the way up to now, but the eyeballs haven't been the same as him. Is he going to be able to handle that pressure on the night, you know?
It's an exponential explosion of Khabib Nurmagomedov's profile, really, isn't it?
Yeah, the same with Nate Diaz. Like, the truth is that when Nate Diaz is a good fighter, but not a phenomenal fighter. But because he's done well against Conor, because his style, as in he can take a lot of punishment, has lended itself against Conor's style, people now think he's amazing. But he's not. Like, he's a very average guy, a very average kind of top 10 guy in the division. He was never a world beater.
The Diaz fight was a lot about the timing and the weights, right?
Yeah.
Like, is any of that an issue this time? Is Khabib the right weight for McGregor? Is he fighting at a weight that he's going to be maintaining his power and his litheness and all that kind of stuff?
So I think Conor's Conor when he would have burst onto the scene was fighting at featherweight, which is 145 pounds. Conor was too big for the division. I do remember the early cuts. He was grey and he looked
so sick.
Yeah. So he's fighting now at 155 in this fight. I think he fought Diaz the first time at 170.
Yeah.
So I think that 155 was like
that was his ego getting a little bit the better.
Yeah. I think 155 is the Goldilocks for him. You know, that's the perfect one. And I think that's where he maintains everything. Like, as in, his cardio's good, his power's good. You know, everything works. I think 170 he's too small. And I think 145, he's way too big.
Yeah.
So he's kind of, I think Khabib struggles at 155 to make weight, has done in the past. So he could have a bit of a struggle for the weight cut. If that happens, that's a big plus for Conor.
Because that's been the big discussion as well, because with a couple of the interviews McGregor's done over the last week about what his path is in the UFC. It's strange that we're actually talking about that, considering this is probably one of the most, probably the most excited any of us have been in terms of an actual tactical breakdown, but still we talk about the future of Conor McGregor in the UFC. And McGregor fans are going to have a big eye on the co-main card as well between Ferguson and Pettis. And I'm not sure, do you have more of a capability of giving an accurate prediction on that one? Is that less tight, from what you're looking at?
I think that's a phenomenal fight. I think the last two fights of that card are amazing. I think Tony's amazing. He's a crazy person. If you ever hear him talk, he just goes in these rambles. But he's a phenomenal fighter. Pettis was like the man back in the day. When WEC merged with the UFC, he was supposed to be the next big thing. They were building him. He's on Wheaties boxes, all this kind of stuff. And then it just kind of fell apart. And now he's had a resurgence. So he lost a few in a row. He seemed to lose the want to fight. He was kind of just showing up for paydays. And then obviously something's happened in his life that's brought him back. I heard him talk recently and he seems to be in a good spot. I think on the feet, Pettis has the advantage. On the ground, Ferguson has the advantage. But I think Pettis might surprise people in that fight.
Like, overall, the lightweight division is looking pretty good at the moment.
It's always been a very good division. It's probably the average size for a human being. So,
Sure.
like, you know, they're meeting at 155 pounds, which is 70 kilos. Most guys are from 70 to 80 anyway, so you're getting the best athletes in the world competing at it.
Should they have more weight classes? I know McGregor was calling for that earlier on this week.
I think as a fighter, I'd like them to because it'd make my life easier. But as a fan, what you'd have is, say, look at that division and it'd strip in two.
It's diluted.
Yeah, so I don't think there's enough. I think it kind of, even when you look at boxing, it's hard to even know what division guys are in. There's like 3 pounds between them, and they're all jumping and changing and chopping. I think the way things are is, there's a company called ONE FC in Asia, and they do things a little bit different. So they do hydration tests on you coming up to the fight to make sure you're not cutting too much water. I think that'd be good to bring in, and then people will just fall into divisions naturally. It'll still be the same amount of guys in each division, but they just be in, like, the guys that fight at 155 might be at 160, and all of them be at 160. Okay. You know, so it'd still be the same amount of guys, but it'd be less dangerous. That'd be a better thing, I think.
Loads of comments coming through. Kean Carroll says, Chris Fields absolutely brilliant here, breaking down Khabib McGregor. The Mayo Don says, as a long-term fan, I'm super impressed how much depth you went to and avoided the clinch questions. The clinch questions, we shouldn't have asked them, apparently. What's next for McGregor if he wins, asks David Keogh. Does he stay in the UFC? It's a big question, right? Like, frequently from the very get-go, the very first time anybody ever meets Conor McGregor, he's like, look, I'm in this for the money. I'm not in this for anything else. I want to get rich. And now he's rich.
Yeah.
Why is he still in it? And so that's the unknowable, and we'll get to know in the middle of the second round, if it goes that far, if he still wants to be in it, and if he feels like, actually, I've made my money. I'm happy now.
Yeah, it's not all about the money. That's a bit.
He says it's not about the money.
That's almost it. Well,
That's what
McGregor
he
said.
at the start.
I know it's an easy thing to say. It's got to be more It's got to be more driving than that. Listen,
well, yeah, like the truth is that you know as well. If you're all about the money, you probably never get there. Is the truth, because it's so hard. Sometimes you just go, this isn't worth it.
This particular sport. I mean, I know you're referencing my sport. Very little, if no similarities in terms of the group dynamic I've been involved in, and the individual nature of this sport, and it's absolutely ferocious. Like, you know what I mean. So
I don't think you make it to that level with that mentality. But there's an old saying from Mike Tyson: it's hard to get up and go running at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk sheets. So, but I think Conor's looking at a legacy now. I think he's looking at what he's going to leave behind, and I think a lot of that money talk might have changed now, and the legacy talk might come in. He's had a son. He's expecting another kid. These are things you want to leave behind that your son will see and that they'll talk about. You know, that changes things. I know it did for me. It changed fighting.
Does that limit him to UFC? I mean, how good is he, Chris, as a boxer? I didn't see you'd know in terms of what you saw in the.
I think
against Mayweather. I mean, what level can he actually box at? Do you think potentially?
He competed at the highest level there against, like I said, it pains me to say, but probably the greatest boxer that's ever lived. Is he Floyd Mayweather's level? Probably not. Could he fight just below that? Yeah, I'm sure he could. And there's a lot of guys there that he could be competing with. I'd prefer to see him fight MMA. I think it's where he does
probably
his best
going to do that now. It looks like
Well, he signed a contract to the UFC, but the UFC would quite happily, I'd say, let him go have another boxing fight because they get a percentage of what's going on. So
yeah, so who knows? So you think he will stay in the fight game for a number of years?
He has signed a long contract with him. I think he signed a 5 or 6 fight contract, but he doesn't have to fulfill that. He can, you know, as in he can just stop fighting at any point.
Yeah.
It's hard, like, if he wins this fight, he's then a 2-weight champion. He's probably made more money than he ever thought he'd make when you had that conversation with him. Like, you know, I'm sure he was thinking in the low millions when you said that, you know.
So maybe he thinks of wealth now as something completely different. He thinks of it as like Floyd Mayweather wealth as opposed to like...
You start to live a certain lifestyle, don't you? It's hard to... and like... prize fighters are notorious for it as well, like, and then somehow at 50 they end up bankrupt.
Does he love the training, Chris? I mean, it's a funny thing to say, but some people do it, it's part of the job, they need to do it for obvious reasons, but some people absolutely love it. They just love it, pushing themselves in the gym, the amount of work you're talking.
He shows up to jiu-jitsu, you know, he'd show up to jiu-jitsu classes when he didn't have fights coming on. You know, he'd show up and just train because he loves training. I think for all of us, when we started, when we were that, like, there was a little select group of about 5 or 6 of us. There was, like, the opportunities were limited. No one from Ireland had ever done anything in the sport. It was underground. It had never been in a newspaper, never been spoke about on a radio show unless it was someone giving out about it. Yeah, I didn't know if I could say Joe Duffy. Yeah. You know, so it had no good light. So, you know, he was part of that. He was that group. So there's definitely a drive there because you wouldn't have got past that stage. You know, if you were just there for it. So I'd imagine a few more fights, cement the legacy, and then call it a day.
One last thing there, you mentioned about having kids and how that changes your sense of everything in perspective. Andy Lee talked about that, sitting in that same seat, and how like he reached a point where he was like...
And he was a great boxer. Yeah, he was a great boxer.
And like for him it was like, do I want to continue doing this because it's so dangerous?
Yeah.
For you that's not the case, obviously.
I do see that side of it. I'll always, like what Kenny was saying, I'll always train. To be honest, I like fighting. I love training.
Yeah.
So the training has always been my favourite part. The fight just gives me something to prepare for. So when I don't have something to prepare for, obviously everything's a bit all over the place. But if you just got to focus for 8 to 10 weeks, that's what you're going to do. So you'll train twice a day, no problem. Get up. You know, you have to eat well. So my plan is kind of to retire around this time next year, but I'd like to have 7 fights in that time frame, which is huge for a year.
Yeah.
Because I almost want to hate it by the time I'm done. So I don't want to go back. I'm 35 now. I'm smart enough to know what kind of sport it is. I'm not an idiot. So I know that a lot of guys tend to like be almost then and they go back in and then they're still having fights at 40 and fighting young lads that are on the up, and you know that's silly stuff. Like, you know, I just want to finish off on a high and just be done with it. That's
what level do you want to get to in those 7 fights?
I'm just like fine. I don't care.
Right.
To be honest,
you're not.
No. I to be honest, I was actually I'm signed to KSW now, and they do like kind of like massive shows with in like 50, 60,000 seater arenas. Some I've never been part of in my life. Walk out and you're like, what is this? You know, you would have had that every week probably. Like, but I like
once or twice in his life.
Yeah. And just the noise and everything, you know. But like for that, I know that like for that show, there's no way they'll have 7 shows that I can fight on. So I don't care about going and finding a school hall in England. It's at this stage, it's love of the sport. I just want to kind of enjoy it. Finish
Will
it
you stay around it, Chris, in terms of training?
I own a gym and I coach at the moment, so that's the other thing that's starting to creep in. That I'm like my guys are kind of, there's a lot of young lads coming through like Ian, Gary and stuff, and they're kind of making a name for themselves on the amateur circuit in Ireland, and my time's starting to get dragged into that. And as you start to do that, you're going like, oh, well, I'm preparing for my fight. You have to be a little bit selfish, but it's difficult because, you know...
Yeah, that's a natural avenue for
Yeah, definitely.
SBG and swords?
Yeah.
Have you seen an uptick just in the last couple of weeks as the...
No, we've been pretty good for the last... I think the sport has just kind of hit a point now where it's known,
it's constant.
The lads that want to do are going to it now, you know, they don't really like... just hear about it because Connor's fighting anymore.
Yeah.
That would have been back in the day. That would have been a big thing.
Is there a crossover? Like, is there a kind of, because you know, around Wimbledon every year, the tennis clubs automatically report numbers surge through the roof. Is there extra interest beyond the baseline?
Like I was saying, there would have been. It doesn't seem to be any like we've a regular kind of amount of guys that are joining up a week, and that would probably stay the same.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of them guys anyway. A lot of that kind of they come in. They're like, oh, I want to be like Connor. That's. You know, 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, mate. The worst is when lads come in, they've never trained before, and they walk in, they try to stand like him and move like him, and just like, well, I'm doing this since I was 6. I can't stand like him and move like him. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Great stuff. If anybody wants any more SBG swords, is there a website?
Yeah, .com. Yeah. And we're on a Facebook page and all that kind of stuff.
Nice one, good stuff. And we'll obviously be talking a bit more about the fight in the build-up. Reminder, OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. I wanted to play you this clip. Brian O'Driscoll here from last Friday's OTB talking about his relationship with Ireland's Call.
How did you feel about singing Ireland's Call? I warmed to it. This bit didn't actually make the documentary, but I was talking with my mum on camera, and I remember when I was captain, I was used to sing Aaron Levine, and then Ireland's Call would come on, and I was like, Aaron Levine's really my anthem, so I didn't sing it for a few times, and my mum picked up on it.
She was watching live?
No, she was in the stands.
Oh,
and she was watching. She said to me after a couple of games, she said, you know, as Ireland captain, I think there's a responsibility on you singing Ireland's call, whether you agree with it or not. And it's true, mums know best. And she was right. I did have a responsibility, just because I personally didn't feel as though it was my anthem. I thought it was my duty to try and be part of something that incorporates everyone.
So by the end,
this only lasted for 2 or 3 games where I stopped singing it, and then I thought, I did sing it. I think it's more difficult to sing with the same gusto as our own Eoin, because actually from a musical perspective, the timing and speed, depending on where you are, of how the band plays Ireland's call, nearly always the singing is ahead of the music.
The shit you have to worry about in the build-up to a game, it's like, are we singing too fast here? Where's the band?
There is that. You do find that when that does happen, it gets ahead of the.
You're on the big screen and you're miles out of the crowd. Do you notice yourself on the big screen singing? Like,
no, I never remember. I wouldn't as a matter of course look at the big screen. To be honest, I wouldn't be aware of it.
But you're a captain. You're the one who's singing there, head up, looking at the flag, singing away.
At the flag, but you're away. But you can be away a little bit. You're not quite in the moment. Close to kick off, and I was singing the anthem, the nature of the game, wherever it is, the energy inside the stadium. You kind of, everybody goes to different places, I suppose, different kind of thought processes and all like that. I was never one regimented. This is what I want to think about, or music, certain type of music I had to be listening to. You know what I mean? But you're never quite sure where your mind takes you. It can be silly little things, a little bit of personal stuff, family, somebody might pop into your head, or a moment, or it can be all sorts of stuff.
Did you find the anthem important, any of that routine important, or was it just stuff to get through to get to the game? Like, it was never.
Yeah, it wasn't a massive one in terms of, do you have any people put on the right boot and all this kind of trivial stuff. It's interesting, the kind of psychology behind it, but I was never into it.
But the anthem specifically, because obviously,
I think that kind of stands out. Like I said to Chris there, I think it's when you become more experienced, you know how to manage those things, because it was the time early in my career. I mean, making me international debut, senior international level was huge for me, and it was. Yeah, for a period of time at the start, I kind of wrestled with it a little bit, just in terms of being able to doubt myself and self-confidence, and kind of just managing myself through it. Like, I'm not really good enough, I'm good enough to be with this environment, I don't want to let myself down. I'm putting the responsibility on your shoulders, what's at stake for everybody, family, Roy touched upon it there, the whole country, all those type of things kind of play a part. Some people might block that out, might even have those kind of thought processes, but I did, so I kind of wrestled with that a little bit. That kind of wasn't easy, managing me emotions, that big adrenaline surge.
And did anybody ever talk to you about that and say, here, listen, this is some stuff you might go through? That's normal.
Oh, no, not in the international. At club level, though, the influences, colleges became more prevalent as my last couple of years.
Former teammates, like the captain of the team, here, listen, it's a big deal, congratulations, it's your first cap.
Yeah, no, that was important. Even that, like, it's simple. Somebody just a little acknowledgement. We're talking about maybe there we reference the kind of managing players, personal attributes, personally how you deal with players and things like that. Do matter. An experienced player coming over, few words, it might necessarily be anything inspirational.
Yeah.
But just the fact that seeing your player take some time to come, spend a bit of time and have a word means a lot. Small little things like that of a human nature kind of really matter. So yeah, those things are important and do matter.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Competition time. Calling all students, we've teamed up with Vodafone X to fuel your passion for sport by giving you the chance to join Team Off the Ball for a week. You'll get to see what happens behind the scenes of a show, attend a press conference, help report at a match, and even feature as a co-host of the show. Kenny's very excited about this. If that wasn't enough, I know he's excited about this part. You'll also receive an iPhone 8 with a year subscription to Vodafone X Sport, giving you access to 7 dedicated sports channels.
I need it. Look at that screen. Look at this. Look at the state. Smash the dog. I hold it at. Look.
Hold it up to the camera there.
No, I don't need that. You can see.
Oh, we do.
It's an
iPhone 4, is it?
Can I have you got 10 seconds?
Yeah.
On the national anthem, there was once I was in a squad once, and we went abroad, and there was actually a few of the lads who didn't know the national anthem, and obviously in Irish, in Gaelic, couldn't sing the national anthem. And a supporter sent in a video tape which they actually played to the whole of the squad, but predominantly to the lads who couldn't recite the national anthem. And what it was like, the Bob Dylan song, he has all the signs and he's thrown them constantly to the side.
Blues.
Maybe. Yeah, so what it was, is it wasn't, they weren't in Gaelic, but it was in English, but in syllables that sounded the same as the Gaelic. So Eoin and Vein, like V-E-A-N. So they're trying to replicate the sound of the syllables, but it was gobbledygook, it was nonsense. But they thought this would be easier. They could fixate on this and they could sing the national anthem by reciting kind of syllables that sounded like the Gaelic, but in fact weren't, and had no understanding of actually what was being said. And straight away, I was like, wow.
So what happened then? Did you just have to teach them?
Yeah, I think so. I think the lads, I don't remember like being, textbooks being handed out or stuff, but I think there was that, look, go and learn it. Go and learn the few verses.
Yeah, like you can remember
that didn't seem straight away when I saw it. There was logic behind it because the lads didn't know the.
Yeah.
But then I thought, no, that's all wrong.
They're real words.
Very quickly, like
it's their own footballers apparently learned phonetically. Michaela Hart taught.
Was it phonetically?
Sean Kavanagh. That's what he said in his interview with us. I think that it was phonetically as opposed to, because you don't learn the language obviously if it's not part of your school.
No, of course. A lot of fall, Sinn Féin fall, FAIRland fall. Fall.
That's an easy one.
So that was replicated all the way.
Running, you just go.
Yeah,
it's like not that hard.
Lip sync. Would you have ever lip sync the national anthem, or was it always kind of blaring it out?
No. Obviously, I knew the anthem, and I just think I think it does. I think it does matter. You know what I mean? Small margins, small percentages. I know perceptions.
Yeah.
When you see all the teams lined up, really going at it kind of full throttle, I think it energises everybody. I think it does matter.
The famous one about the Spanish not being into it because they weren't singing the anthem, and then of course it has no words. I think it was Dunphy was like, they're not into it tonight. They're not singing the anthem. It's like, no words, Eamon. Now that might be an urban myth. To be in with a chance to win our competition anyway, submit your demo tape and details to offtheball.com/VodafoneX, and if you are particularly into your Snapchat or Instagram, then we want to hear from you, especially on this one as well. The reason we're talking about the anthem is obviously that comment from Brian O'Driscoll was ahead of his documentary, which is called Shoulder to Shoulder, and it's on BT Sport 2 on Friday the 12th of October at 10 o'clock. We're going to do the polls once more. Is the Leinster-Munster rivalry dead? 68% says no, 14% says yes, 18% says it was always like this.
Why is there a poll in my head? Like, why is this? I don't know.
Why is on your head?
Yeah.
Well, you're the screen cap and you're the lovely face. Rugby rivalries with players crossing the divide and a bigger focus on what's best for the Irish rugby team. Is the Leinster-Munster rivalry dead in 2018? Facebook. This is Facebook? This is Twitter.
No, this is Off the Ball Rugby.
This is Twitter. Twitter says 41% says yes.
So basically, they asked the question in a different way on a different account to try and get a different result for you because you were not satisfied.
That is real desperation on Jerry's point, isn't it? Yeah.
Complete
even though clearly you're not happy to be in the minority, really. The reality situation is you're not happy to be in the minority.
I always want to be in the minority.
Desperate to be part of the majority
absolutely,
in effect.
Yeah, contrarian, I think, is the word we're looking for.
I hate the mob, Kenny. I hate the mob and their bullshit way of thinking. Zidane likes to play youth and experience. He'd be perfect, says Vince Chapman. Conte and Simeone couldn't play the Manchester United style.
We spoke about that. In terms of lifting the mood, in terms of personality coming into the dressing room, I think straight away the whole thing would lift. There's a huge amount of respect for Zidane as a player, his qualities as a player, but I think just how he carries himself as well, seems very humble, very modest.
You get the best out of Pogba, at least there'd be some kind of understanding, a similar language.
Why? Because they're both from France?
I think there'd be a natural affinity there for any player. Forget about France. He's a
Zinedine Zidane scores the 2 goals that win the World Cup in Paris when Pogba is a kid. He is at least he has some chance of communicating with Pogba on a level that Mourinho
and the qualities Zidane has. There's other French players, say Deschamps, who won maybe the honours your time, but Pogba wouldn't have had the same type of respect for him. But the type of player Zidane was, the technical qualities, the creativity he had as a player, he was absolute magician.
Pogba's got a problem if he can't respect the World Cup winning captain from his own country.
No, respectable, but actually be in awe of somebody. You'd actually be in awe of somebody. That wouldn't be easy for Pogba. Wouldn't be too many of those players who fall into that
idea that you need to be in awe of somebody to actually respect your manager is an absolute nonsense as well. Like,
When
I mean,
you're
that's
Paul
a
Pogba.
bad reflection of Paul Pogba.
But Pogba has reached a level where, like, how many people is he going to respect? He's literally done everything that he wanted to do in the game already, and he's like in his mid-20s. It's hard for him now to be like very enthusiastic.
Hasn't won a Premier League, hasn't won a Champions League.
About a Wolves match. It's like, yeah, well, I've just won the, but the World Cup trumps the Champions League.
It does, yeah. But he hasn't won everything he's in his career.
Zidane to Villa and Bruce to Manchester United.
Yeah, that'll work. Steve Bruce from Manchester United. Kenny, what do you reckon?
It's Jimmy Armstrong. I think it's time for one of those ex-Man United players to kind of come in and get this job, though, right? Like, isn't it? The whole point is that we're one of these great clubs. We have these former players.
As long as they have the skill set, Ger, I think
I'd like to see Paul
it is
Scholes get the job just to like see how good a manager he'd be. You know, it's great being a pundit and everything.
Jose into BT.
And a bit annoyed. That would be excellent. A little bit of job swap for a couple of weeks. Kenny Cunningham is a national treasure and his passion about cabbages is admirable, says Sean Whelan on Twitter. Agreed. He's the best thing on radio. Joe Casey, Kenny's some man. And Derek Ryan says, you're hilarious, Kenny. We can't disagree with any of that.
I don't actually take that as a compliment.
No?
I'm hilarious. Yeah.
Or
you could take that literally. You could take that both ways.
I'd actually be offended.
I know that's what you were thinking. Yeah.
Last one here is Peter Marr says, have a cook-off on the show as an add-on. It would be great to see some bants around a frying pan. Haha. I think Buff Egan's got that particular strain.
It's a great show. 4 frying pans, bread, off you go. 3 minutes, the best you can do, fry bread.
Fried bread or French toast, same thing.
We will do this, 100%.
Let's do it.
We just have to find it. So you agree?
Acquired skill. It's an acquired skill.
Right.
Fried bread. I haven't done it for years. My dad couldn't crack. My dad had his bad. He used to fry bread, but he had his bad days. He'd come down, he'd put the fried bread on the plate, soggy, soft. Come on, seriously. That's not good enough.
How does that conversation
Walk away
go?
from the table and discuss, get the Rice Krispies out, bottle of Rice Krispies, go to the living room and discuss, and leave the soft, soggy fry bread on the plate.
And now as a parent, what do you think of your behaviour, Kenny? Now as a parent,
No, I think that's fair play. Fried bread stands alone. Fried bread stands alone. It has to be cooked a certain way.
I've just cooked your fried bread, Kenny.
Oh no, you can taste the grease. Soft, you can taste the grease.
As a young athlete
oil,
as well.
The cooking oil.
We need to have a name for the segment. Are we going to call it Ready Kenny Cook? Are we going to call it Come Dine with OTB?
He's gone back to
Cooking with Cunningham.
Cooking with Cunningham.
Kenny works when you're trying to work it into.
Did you say Ready Kenny Cook? Is that it? I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Off the cuff, Owen. That's like.
Well, I was thinking. I didn't even listen to that conversation. I was thinking for cooking puns while you were speaking. I heard something about your dad cooking fried toast.
Yeah. So we've also launched a new podcast this week. It's called Dadcast. You can search for it on Audio Boom or wherever you get your podcasts, on iTunes as well. It's Dave McIntyre, Adrian Barry, Nathan Murphy, and myself complaining about our.
Complaining.
Not our children.
Just complaining generally.
Yeah, it's a half hour of complaining about.
Nothing new there, Owen, to be honest, really. Nothing new there.
Next up on Off the Ball, the Keith Andrews Show, which has Jonathan Walters, Alan Judge, Keith, and Joe Malloy in the Irish squad will be named today. Off the Ball is back tonight from 7 to 10 p.m. We're back tomorrow morning from 7:45 a.m. You can check out offtheball.com, our YouTube channels, and our podcasts right across the day. Kenny, brilliant. Thanks very much for being with us today. Owen, yeah, good 5 out of 10. I mean, I think you've embarrassed yourself there with the French toast.
No, the Ready Kenny Cook brought me back up to a 7.
It did.
Fried toast.
You got out of jail.
He's a fried toast. He threw in at the end. He killed himself.
Oh, sorry, fried bread.
Get everything mixed up.
It's like saying what do you put into a toaster and someone says toast and you're like, nah, bread, got you. That's the greatest prank of all time.
Good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.